Hello, hello, hello. You are very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I am Daragh, and I'm delighted to say now I'm joined by a very special guest this evening, Shane.
Hi.
Shane, actually, he's always here, but he's a special guest this evening.
Neither special nor a guest, but it is this evening.
It is this evening, and not when we're uploading it, it's the morning, but sure, listen, it's the evening somewhere. We are two brothers talking all things rugby from the point of view of Leinster and Ireland, and we are back again in advance of the Lions tour. We have another sort of previewing show. We do have a bit of Lions rugby to dig into. They had a game last week against Japan. Geez, the fallout from that was something else. We'll get into all of that. Obviously, the terrible news surrounding Alan Wynne-Jones. Yeah. We're going to be discussing the whole thing in today's show and previewing a range of things. We're going to start obviously with that Lions-Japan game. We're going to look back on sort of whatever the big takeaways were from that, of course, which there were many. We're also going to look ahead to the Lions against the Lions this week.
That's
in
right.
In a an interspecies or a intraspecies contest, which will be interesting to see, and that'll be the opening game of the tour in South Africa. So we're going to dig into that, and we're of course going to look back on the other international games which happened at the weekend, including New Zealand Maori against Samoa, and the opening game of the South American Rugby Cup qualifiers between Brazil and Paraguay. And then, of course, we're going to pivot and look ahead to all the games in the summer series.
Yeah, as well as making mention of the Rugby Europe Championship, which got back underway with the newly included Netherlands facing Georgia. And we'll look ahead to this weekend's game between Spain and Russia in that one. We'll also then touch back on we'll take a look at the Rugby Africa Cup, which got underway earlier this month and is resuming this week, and is part of a 2-year kind of World Cup qualifier series, so we're going to make mention of that. And then we're going to touch on the under-20s competitions, but the Six Nations and the under-20s series that's going on in Stellenbosch in South Africa as well.
Indeed, and we're going to also move on to club footy, which somehow, as we enter into July, is still on the agenda, but not for any longer. We had two great finals to look back on. We have two newly crowned champions again. Toulouse managing to do the double and staking their claim as Europe's best side. And the Harlequins, what a story from them, coming back from the doldrums in January, coming back from the doldrums at half-time in the semi-final.
Coming from fourth in the rankings on the league table to come and steal the title. Excellent stuff.
Just by playing class rugby and really typifying what has been just an awesome season in terms of the style of rugby that's been played in the Premiership in England, which can only mean good things for their national team going forward, I would go so far as to say, and we'll congratulate Quins. We'll also mention the Major League Rugby and Currie Cup Rugby, which is also going on, just in the interests of making sure that everything is mentioned.
Yes, indeed. We'll also wrap up the show with the rugby news of the week, and as well, as always, if you do enjoy this form of long-form rugby content, please be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notified, and also drop a comment down below. We do enjoy the discourse, and all of that stuff does help the channel as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good to get some chats going. The bell actually takes on some significance this week because of the fractured nature of the Lions tour, and also the fractured nature just of the calendar in general. See, we're shooting now in midweek, but next week the Lions are playing the Sharks in midweek, and so we might drop a preview video on that, but we're also not going to shoot the main show until after that game, just so that we have all the info that we need for next week's show. So we might be dropping one or two sporadic videos in the middle, also because the Wallabies are taking on France, and that's the real big non-Lions series of the summer between two class teams who actually haven't met each other since 2016. So it's just a really exciting series, although not that you'd tell the broadcasters here in the UK and Ireland. But that kicks off on Wednesday, so definitely be on the lookout. We're going to post a video somewhere around the Monday-Tuesday region digging into that game just on its own, so we might have some videos that weren't part of the main show, so if you have that bell clicked, you'll get notified whenever we do upload anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. So I suppose without any further ado, we're going to park that one because we'll dig into it in a preview to come, as Daragh just mentioned, but we are going to look at the Lions tour, starting with the first warm-up match, which happened in Murrayfield last week versus Japan, and it finished 28-10 to the Lions. The Lions themselves looking very, very good in that opening showing, particularly the opening stanza of that opening showing, where they kind of weathered what Japan were gamely throwing at them in terms of finding the extremities and trying to test the defence. The defence remained pretty robust and cohesive, and then they managed to find some good tries then off the back of some ball.
They found some excellent tries. It was man of the match showing from Dan Biggar, which was excellent. He was the main takeaway in terms of just the quality of his pass. I would say from Murray as well.
Yeah.
But they moved the ball a lot better than I was expecting. While they did kick a lot in the mid third, they managed to make the Henshaw-Aki centre partnership work just by those guys cutting harsh lines just with the passing from the halfbacks, and in particular Bigger. Some of those sequences for some of those tries were excellent, just putting the tempo on, causing Japan problems. I think of the Duhan try in particular, just where they were so stretched and Duhan just saw the short side and
it
went.
Was funny, both wingers getting on the board in quick succession, both up that flank, up the right flank for the Lions and up the left flank for the Japanese as well. I know you were citing the left flank as an issue for them all day.
It was.
But from the Lions' point of view, it was just kind of crisp and accurate and with good tempo to kind of execute. Adams and Van der Merwe getting on the board, both wingers, always good. And then a couple of Irish tries as well. Henshaw with a nice short line off set piece after a period of sustained pressure, and probably Tyg Byrne with the pick of the bunch in terms of a lovely hard line cut from midfield, what we know he can do, what Scarlets fans know he can do, and he delivered in a Lions shirt, so delighted for him.
Yeah, exactly. Jack Conan as well. I mean, we'll touch on the bringing in of Beard and Navidi obviously in due course, but a noticeable direction already, I think, from the Lions in terms of takeaways. Like they're leaning towards the loose forwards as sources of distribution and of sort of incision in the midfield, getting those guys wider and using them to break up things in the midfield, and then having that defensive solidity from the actual centres who aren't relied on to maybe cut the lines or throw the passes or get the offload game going as much. And we saw it work to great effect. I mean, Bundyaki and Henshaw defended brilliantly, and just they were tough. They did their jobs. They did what they said on the tin. And then with the mixture of Bigger's passing and Murray's passing and those loose forwards, those ball playing loose forwards, they managed linking up really well. They managed to strike a really good balance, and I think that it's an indication of how they're going to go about things. And I think not looking great for Owen Farrell right now as far as the test team. Looking from the outset, it looks very likely that might be the test midfield, with some combination of ball playing loose forwards making up for the lack of distribution in the centre. Yeah,
I think I would agree with that. And then just other notes as well, just on the tight. Obviously the set piece kind of went well for them in this one. They certainly had more than a match for Japan, but bigger tests come. But it was a really good showing from both Laws and particularly Biggie and Henderson once the captain went down. Obviously Alan Wynne-Jones was lost after 7 minutes. And it's a tough ask when you're trying to focus on set piece, and the tour captain and leader in that area went off, and they responded very, very well to that. I thought the set piece
stats wise, well. The set piece was, I think, 100%.
There you go. Perfect. So that's big credit to those guys, because obviously that's a tough scenario. Ken Owens, the sheriff, perfect arrows and very, very busy all day. He was another one throwing his hat in the ring for captaincy stakes with a leadership showing like that. He was very, very busy throughout. And then who else was worthy of mention? The only one I could cite as a little bit of an underwhelming performance was Faletau. I thought Faletau off the bench for Tipperick was particularly poor, mainly because everyone else was looking pretty good, but he had at least 5 missed tackles that I counted, and 1 penalty that he gave away very early, which by contrast to Conan, who looked very impressive, and then you had Simmons lighting it up and Dombrant and all in the Premiership final. Even like Simmons is in the squad. It hasn't done his stock all that good.
It's the fickle nature of rugby and the fickle nature of form when the squad is so deep. And you're right. Faletau played poorly. He was not
probably
himself.
The only one I could cite as having done so.
And he may well, you're talking with a torso short. He'll probably get 2 more chances, maybe 1. Like if he has another bad game, that'll be rough for him. And his stock is, in terms of likelihood to start, when you look at how stacked the back row options, he's gone from probably a front runner for that number 8 jersey to right in the mix, even with that showing, such as just the harsh nature of the game.
Yeah, it was a perfect opening for Warren Gatland in terms of he got everything he wanted done. The game was sewn up very early. You had guys like Jack Conan performing really well in the back row, and across the board the back row going very well. Obviously lost his captain, not ideal, but just be able to end that game by hauling Jack Conan off there, allegedly for a niggle that was before a kick-off, but it seemed to us anyway watching the game that they just wanted to end that game defending with 14 men, and they did so for at least 10 minutes. It was more like 12 or so that they were scrummaging with 7 men, and they were finishing the game out. And basically a defensive set, and a successful one at that, because they did repel. They didn't allow the Japanese to cross their line in that time. So
indeed, it was a clever approach. I was like, overall, I think it gets an A, because I think in our preview last week we were saying, this is going to be stuttery. This is going to be 60 minutes even, and then the Lions pull away.
Yeah,
but to nail it on from minute 1, to gel so well that there are no hiccups at set piece, no real hiccups on defense.
In fact, very good cohesion on defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Henshaw's tackle on Matsushima in the 67th or 8th, it might have been even in 72 minutes or something. It was just, he was the danger, he was marshalled, they were trying to move it, they were trying to find space, but they were very cohesive and physical throughout.
Absolutely, yeah, but it to look as well drilled as they did was exceptional, and to have that win off without a hitch, awesome. And the 14-man drill, you know, I was, when I was making that point earlier on to someone I know, that they were saying, I don't know about that, it seems a bit disrespectful to Japan. But I think it's such a worthwhile drill. You're starting to see a lot more teams work it in training with the prevalence of red cards. And I actually think there's been an uptick, sorry to talk over you, but I think there's been an uptick in the quality of performance with 14 men. I think a noticeable one since teams have started to really drill it in. What do you do when you have 14? And you're getting a huge number of examples of teams coping with it and even thriving under this sort of.
Absolutely. Well, it forces you to try and kick, or to not kick the ball, to keep the ball, because you want to try and own territory and possession while you're down to 14 men, and just eat off the minutes and ideally chalk a try up. And Exeter have been experts at that all season. Actually, they're very good at it in the Premiership. But the Lions showed good defensive hustle and good reading and good stick tackles throughout that period, as well as solid scrummaging. With normally scrummaging with 7 not advisable. Obviously it'll be a bigger tests to come, both literally and figuratively, but literally just having that kind of evidence in the bank, having good minutes in the bank for guys like Sutherland in the front row, guys like Wyn Jones as well, getting minutes on board and looking pretty good.
Sutherland great as well, because obviously the pressure on him, you know, given the injuries he's had, and the fact that he's come into the squad ahead of the likes of Marler, the likes of Genge, the likes of Cian Healy. The reason that he's in there is because he's such a great scrummager, and he showed it. Granted, it was against, you know, not as good a tight head as we facing against.
Was the tight head
indeed, but not the same caliber as the Springboks. But it was a really, really great start for the Lions, and I think that goes just across the board. I was delighted with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Same as it was a joy to watch in terms of just, as you say, close to an A grade for a potential banana skin. The worst being obviously the injury profile. That is the price of it, and we'll touch on that in the news section just after this. But we will make mention of Japan, because this was their first game since the Rugby World Cup, first test match at all, and they showed good ambition with the ball as always. They tried to move it from minute one. All of their midfield, you had Tamura, you had Nakamura, Lafayette, all trying to play distributor, all trying to find the extremities, ultimately trying to find Matsushima out there, and sometimes doing so. They had certainly had a massive gap, a Kenki Fukuoka shaped hole on their left flank that I know was annoying you on throughout watching it.
Well, it wasn't so much annoying me. I mean, I think they're a joy to watch, and they're still very much themselves. Nakamura was the shining light in that back line, unlike the World Cup where he was often the overlooked man. I think Lafayette looked a little rusty, and certainly on defence he wasn't.
He was a little soft for the Henshaw try. It was a bit of a weak tackle from him.
On a few occasions, to be honest, he had a few, but in offence he was getting sharper as the game went on.
Yeah, certainly finished strongly in that period when they were attacking 14. A few nice touches from him. You saw the potential, and all of those guys will benefit from minutes under their belt and a high quality opposition that they were facing. It'll stand them in great stead in the tests to come, starting with Ireland this week. But there was the issue that you're talking about that I was citing. Does have to do with the debutant Siasaya Fafita, who was obviously a lad from the under-20s, a young lad who's came in and played on the left wing. An outside centre by trade, and that's the issue there.
It's one of the issues, but I mean it definitely gave me pause to see an outside centre on the left wing when I saw it in the test team, and then to see him on the pitch, it was just a shame, because Japan need to be about speed, and they were about speed. They got to the extremities quickly. They
found a lot of space. They got him into space quite a bit.
They put him into a load of space, but the danger wasn't there, and certainly what Fukuoka would have done in that kind of space, not to shame Kenki into coming back to rugby, he's gone and that's fine, but they do need to stick to their roots, and having a big centre moved to the wing, it seemed really experimental, and it was wrong. It didn't look. They got to the extremities and couldn't make it count. And
whereas when you think back to those World Cup showings, once it gets to those edges, that's where their lethal guys are.
They just came from nowhere, like Fukuoka and Matsushima. But Fukuoka was the standout. But when they were in the wide channels, they were just gone. Gone. He'd beat the first man, he'd be gone, he'd have a man on his inside and a try. It was a beautiful thing. And they were not that this evening, and they or the other day, and they do need to they do need to address that and
Probably
have
find
speed
more
on
speed.
both wings.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have it. They've always had that, Japan.
Yeah.
And it's a necessary ingredient to what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. But all of that being said, in the back row they had some standout performers. Labuschagne I thought was excellent throughout, putting himself about, winning some contacts. They were struggling with the contact area and the collision zone, understandably.
Until Jimeno came on.
And actually Jimeno and was it Tamora who came off the bench? No, Tatafu.
Tatafu for his debut.
On debut was brilliant in the number 21 jersey. He was winning contacts almost willingly towards the end. That's and then Jimeno grabbing the try that they got was good. Some encouragement from the back row stocks. Michael Leach, the legend that is, did look the couple of years older that he is. To my eye, it was a bad, uncharacteristic drop at the beginning of the game, and he definitely seemed to struggle with the pace and intensity of it, whereas the younger guys didn't so much. It could be a changing of the guard in the offing in that area.
I'm never going to doubt Michael Leach.
No.
I'm never going to write him off. But it could be interesting. I know he's the captain, but it could be interesting to see whether springing him from the bench might work.
Yeah.
And whether it's
just
worth
putting him up against more tired bodies than the fresh guys at the beginning, because he's definitely he is another few years older. He's definitely, I'm not writing him off. He has all kinds of uses for them, but considering the wealth of stocks, when you have Labuschagne playing as well, and you have Jimeno and debutant Tatafu coming on,
and Aki Mafi as well, who did nothing wrong while he was on.
All good headaches in that area. And then the one person I wanted to mention was Ji-won Koo at tight head. Had a tough old game for them, trying to lock down that scrum against Rory Sutherland. Probably, like, he's going to have to expect kind of pressure coming up when you tour the northern side. You're going to expect pressure from loose heads in all that area all day. So it's a rude awakening for him. It's definitely trial by fire, because it's not going to get much tougher than having a front row of, what was it, Rory Sutherland, Ken Owens and Tyg Furlong up against you. Like, that's crazy. Big powerful men. So it was just a rude awakening. It seemed like a long day at the office for him. It's understandable, the tight head always looks a bit bad, but there was one in particular where his shape was all kinds of buckled and Rory just got him entirely, and his number 3 was pointed at the ref by the end, and then he ended up slamming on his own hooker at the bottom, and it's never a good look for a prop.
Listen, they hadn't played a game in 2 years. It was understandable. They looked a little rusty. They grew into the game as they all started getting their hands on the ball, and they did, granted, with the Lions taking their foot off the gas, find a try and then nearly find more. They were probing and pressing, and actually what seemed to suck the life out of them was that bizarre exchange between I think it was Labuschagne, Tamora, and the water boy.
The tea man who kept bringing the tea in, and Dan Bigger wasn't going to let the ref know or forget that that's technically means that he has to take the kick, because there he was presenting water to him with a tea tucked, and it was like, you got to take the kick now, the tea's on the field. Which is
Tamora was raging at that and missed the kick, and then they did it again 2 minutes later or something, with a similar opportunity on the other side of the pitch, and it was why they ended up getting the kick and getting to 10, I guess, which was fine, but it wasn't right. They could have and should have got another try and maybe got it to 28 to 14, and then who knows if they can nick one at the end, then it's a one score
I would have
game.
thought that probably would have been a fair result, 28-14, given the way it went, but they didn't go for it. They didn't get it. They went for it towards the end. The Lions defended very, very well, so that's all it is. That was a strange exchange. I remember noting it. It was like, what's going on? And there was confusion on the pitch, going, what is going on? Do they have to take the kick now, for God's sake? And Tamora did look visibly annoyed, because he definitely wasn't the one demanding that he take the kick, and
he didn't want to. He wanted to go to the corner, and hence missed it. But that was a funny old exchange. But in the main, the Lions comfortable winners. In Japan, no shame in that performance after 2 years off. They were getting themselves together. And they have another game against Ireland to look forward to as well, so they're far from dead.
No, they'll benefit from that hit out, but so will the Lions. It was a game played in decent spirits, and all things considered, it went well for the Lions to get started.
And great to see fans back as well.
Great
it'll be the only
16,500 was it in Murrayfield?
It'll be the only game this tour now
where you'll see the Lions fans in their Lions heads, Lions outfits and all that, and the colourful Japanese fans who were enthusiastic as well. It was good colour in Murrayfield from the few that were there. That's definitely true. The Lions have since departed for South Africa, where there will be a different environment altogether, and I suppose we will park that game and pivot into just the Lions news of the week. Obviously we were alluding to it throughout, but Alan Wynne-Jones went down after an awkward clean out in the 7th minute of that game against Japan, and will now miss the tour, having been slated to captain it. it is such a shame for such a great player. And the other terrible loss from the Welsh stocks is Tipperick as well, who also went down, and his tour is over. Two of the MVPs of Wales in their Six Nations showing this year, and just over the last consistently over the last 5 years plus. All the rest, these two are world class footballers, and we wish them speedy recoveries.
Yeah, I mean they were two players who would have easily could easily have been playing in the Test games. Obviously, Alan Wynne-Jones almost certainly would have been with his captaincy and everything else. Tremendous leadership, tremendous experience from both. From a Lions point of view, to be callous about it, the stocks in the locks and the back row are still very decent.
Yeah.
So there's no major concern where that is, but just to lose the captain, obviously, it just for the individuals involved, for Tipperick and Alan Wynne, it's obviously gutting. Alan Wynne has had a great career with injuries. He's been quite lucky in his time, but not on this occasion. It was definitely a rough one, and he knew instantly.
He did. He was nursing. We thought it was a wrist because he was limp, but it turns out it was the shoulder.
Yeah, when you watch it back, I was wondering, how did I think it was a wrist? I was sort of distracted by the limp wrist, but he was holding up his shoulder, which had dislocated. Yeah, and that was his issue.
All she wrote, really.
Gone are the days of pop back in and play on
and run on and finish that game. He might have done. He's cut from that kind of stock that he probably would have done if it was a tour in the 1990s or something, or even earlier. But no, alas, it is the end of Alan Wynne-Jones's tour all too soon. But in his stead, Conor Murray has been named as the new touring captain, and mighty congratulations to Murray. He's a very good choice as well. It was probably between him and Ken Owens and Maro Itoje.
It was between him. I guess as it turns out, it was.
It blindsided you a bit.
Blindsided you a bit. I think as well. Who did it not blindside? I think it blindsided Murray. I mean. Yeah, I was listen, I'm chuffed for him. I don't think it's necessarily a bad decision either. I like his temperament. I think
he will play the games now.
Yeah,
he's a part of Warren Gatland's plan.
He is. It's an indication. It's probably it's probably an example of two things that Gatland would be known for. Two typical Gatlandisms. I suppose in hindsight you could have seen it coming, just because it so heavily leans back on the two Gatland tropes, and that's one thing. It's just doing the mad and unexpected on certain things. He likes that. And then on the other, it's the guys who've done it from before. It's trust. And listen, Murray was, if not the MVP, pretty close to it in the last Lions tour. He was the guy who found that try that dug them out against the All Blacks in that second test in Wellington. Right. He was awesome. Yeah. And Gatland respects that. He likes guys. He likes guys he can trust. Yeah. And Murray definitely is that. Yeah.
He fits the mold. Gatland was the one who found Mike Phillips, and it was like kind of a prototypical kind of mold of scrum half. But with Murray, he's found someone he can exit with reliably as well. I think attributely Murray is the best scrum half he has on tour, and he certainly feels that, even if it's a form v class argument. Like, Murray's class is probably a few levels higher than he's shown in the last couple of seasons, but it's there, and it is very dangerous, and it's something that the Lions will be leaning heavily in on to see them through. There'll be a lot of his box kicking is a huge attribute. He's the best in the world at that particular skill.
His passing game was great on the weekend as well. I'm sure the decision was definitely influenced by how well Murray played. He was really good. It was as good a showing as I've seen from him in a long while against Japan. He was composed, passed really well. I know he had a couple of loose kicks, but
one towards the end, when he was getting tired just before coming off. But for the most part, when the game was in the balance for the brief period that it was, he drove a nice tempo and played very well and assured, and made one half of a very good pairing with Biggar. Yeah. That looks like the front running for the Test jersey, those two as well.
Indeed, and it goes back to my point about Aki and Henshaw being front runners for the Test team right now, is that Farrell didn't get the nod. That's a funny one. Like, he was voted the leader. He was voted as the sort of number one leader in the squad, or whatever vote they had the other week. Faz was definitely an option. Ken Owens was definitely an option. But I think Maro Itoje was the interesting one. He's for one. He's the one that for me could have been, because I think he certainly will be in the Test squad. But I think what counted against Ken Owens and Farrell is that they're not front runners for the Test shirts right now. I think Jamie George and potentially Bundy Aki. I know we haven't seen Chris Harris yet, but Bundy Aki at 12, allowing Henshaw to defend the 13 channel, might be the option right now. Certainly he looked well able. So
he did.
Murray gets the nod. Cherry Thornley came with the tidbit that he is 0-1 as a captain in professional rugby. He's captained Munster once and they lost against Ospreys back in 2014, 7 years ago.
Wow.
That was the last time he ever captained a team.
Yeah, well, generally speaking, I don't like halfbacks as captains because generally halfbacks are pretty lippy and you can get on the wrong side of the ref pretty
Murray's
easily.
not that guy, though.
But Murray isn't. I was going to say that Murray isn't really that guy. Like, I'd be very concerned if it was Gareth Davies he'd named as captain. But no, in Murray he does have a bit of a calm head. Certainly his temperament on the pitch is more level-headed than most scrum halves, but most players around him as well. He'll be a part of that leadership group, and yeah, huge congratulations to him. It's a big honour for
massive for
Murray.
Irish rugby as well. Plenty of Lions captains now in recent years for Ireland, and yeah, that it's delighted for him. I hope I'll be watching with intrigue to see how he copes with it. Is he going to stick to his game? Is he going to be a little nervy and recede backwards and not take as many risks, or is he going to
be emboldened by it?
Is he going to try and force the play? I'm just going to be watching with interest to see if it affects anything that he does on the pitch.
Yeah,
because it certainly is a massive responsibility, and he might just feel he has to be the guy to dig people out now and in the big moments. So yeah, that'll be it's such a new experience for him. But you'd hope the likes of Ken Owens and the likes of Farrell.
Well, those guys who you mentioned, who are a core leadership group anyway, it's kind of there is a touch of, and I think that's what he was saying. He did his first presser today as we shoot. It's Tuesday, but he was mentioning that he'll probably try not to change too much himself and rely on some of those guys that he can lean on, who are great leaders, as well as sapping examples from people like Peter O'Mahony. He was citing guys from his club who kind of lead by example and stuff, and he'll try and follow in their footsteps. All very well spoken, good words from the newly appointed captain, and we watch with curious eyes to see how he gets on.
Absolutely. In other news, the two men did have to be replaced, and they've been replaced with two Welshmen. Josh Navidi comes in as a back row option, another rangy ball playing loose forward.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially there's so many back row stocks, it's probably too many to name, but there's lots of guys can feel aggrieved, and I wonder who picked up a knock. But certainly Josh van der Fleer on Irish waters has been in fabulous form. Peter O'Mahony, who's captain Jamie Ritchie, who's captain the Scotland squad now. All of these guys were probably contenders too. In Navidi, he's got another rangy, fast, loose forward, and then Adam Beard is the other one who's coming to replace Alan Wynne-Jones. And again, it's not Johnny Gray, it's not James Ryan. I know there was talk of James Ryan having an injury, but it instead he's opted for the guy who hangs out in the wide channels, who makes passes, who's about speed,
who was a big part of that winning campaign of Wales's that people seem to have forgotten about.
There was definitely some chagrin among fans, even Irish fans and Scottish fans, allowing their emotions to get the better of them and talking but if you use the word fans loosely, these are people who haven't heard of Adam Beard, and that's what annoys them. But that's on them, but it's not on Adam Beard or Warren Gatland.
No.
But the decision from a tactical point of view makes all the kinds of sense, and it's encouraging. It's about having these. I know I interchange loose forward with locks, but sometimes a lock is a loose forward, and sometimes a lock's a tight forward. In my head, it kind of depends on the lock.
It does.
I would categorise James Ryan and Johnny Gray as tight forwards, but Adam Beard is kind of a loose forward.
Certainly his role is to be a little wider and to be distributing. He works very well as the spearhead of that kind of pod arrowhead shape where he has pullback or inside options.
And 3 or 4 times he did it in the lead up to tries in that Six Nations. He was a pivotal link in many of those Welsh attacks, and has gorgeous silky hands for a big man, pace to take a gap if need be as well, and he does all the nuts and bolts work as well, runs a line out really well. He's a quality player, and I'm
delighted for him. It's a big honour. He's been well worthy of his call up, so no controversy from these particular Irish pundits, but I think congratulations to the two, and they make sense, as you say. It's speed, it's kind of not like for like in the case of Alan Wynne-Jones, but he's getting more speed and more options.
It's encouraging. They're not going to try and take it looks to my eye like they're not going to try and take the box on in a bloodbath.
Tight wrestling arm wrestle is probably not the wise way to go.
Try and move them, which is correct
and proper. Absolutely. And speaking of the box, we do have the refs for the 3 tests now as well. So the first test is going to be refed by an Australian, Nick Berry. He'll be the man in the middle, and then the second test we have a Kiwi, Ben O'Keefe. And then the third test we have a French ref in Mathieu Reynal, so it could all come down to Reynal yet. And meanwhile there'll be a Kiwi TMO. We have Brendan Pickerel in the TMO for all 3 tests. So we have the official officiating crew in line. What do you think?
Don't like
an Aussie, a Kiwi, and a Frenchman.
I just don't like having the same TMO in there.
Same
there's
TMO
gotta,
every
there's got to
time.
be scope for getting him out of there if he's doing a bad job. But yeah, no, listen, there's always scope for controversy with referees in this game, but we wish the three of them all the best, and we sincerely hope with all of our hearts that they do a very good job.
Yeah.
That's
all I'll say about that. And that's all I have to say about that.
Absolutely.
When was the last time a Frenchman refereed Test 3? It was the last time.
Yeah.
We make deal.
Nothing happened there.
Nothing happened there.
Yeah. Anyway, the other news that surrounds this tour, which is sort of less light and not something we love talking about in the context of a rugby discussion, but have to, is the third wave in South Africa and the terrible situation that's going on over there, in particular in the province around Pretoria and Johannesburg. I believe there's a massive surge of cases. And they've gone into a national lockdown where there's going to be curfews, tight restrictions, no beer to be sold. It's interesting, like from a really selfish tourist point of view, it's not ideal for the Lions, but it's a crazy backdrop against which to have a tour like this, and the one has there's been musings on the ethics of even going in the context of this. What I will say is that where this differs from the Japan Olympic concerns is that the virus is kind of already there in South Africa. The Lions themselves are vaccinated. It's not like they're bringing a horde of people adding risk. Hopefully the idea here is to be sort of a positive distraction and to give the South African public something to watch while they're locked down as well.
Indeed,
and
which
to provide the escapism and entertainment that sport can provide.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is exactly the hope for this test. Obviously, most recent news from the Springbok camp concerning that, or from the Springbok camp concerning that, is that there were 3 confirmed cases, and they had to cancel their Sunday training session as a result of them. Now,
I believe one Elton Yankees, or was it Herschel Yankees, was a false positive. So he's back in the squad.
There were positive rumblings from both Nyamba and from Rassie that this won't affect them, that they're going to isolate, they're doing everything properly, and they're still able to field the team. They've named their team for their game this week against Georgia, and they're going to motor ahead and try and get some game time under their belt and be ready for the Lions in a few weeks. That's their plan.
Absolutely. And speaking of the Lions, back onto the games themselves. There is a game this weekend, the first official game of the tour, which is going on in Ellis Park. It is the Lions against the Lions.
Yes, we have the Lions v the Lions.
The Emirates Lions, or Golden Lions, depending on your persuasion. The Joburg Lions against the British and Irish Lions. And this is it's the colour is that they're both Lions, but it's definitely an ease in kind of game for the Lions themselves, I would think.
Well, it is and it isn't. It is in Ellis Park, which will be a factor. It's on this Saturday, the 3rd. Kickoff is 6 p.m. local time or 5 o'clock BST, which is where we are. It's going to be reffed by AJ Jacobs of South African Rugby Union, with Barnesy and Piper on the sidelines and Stuart Berry in the Timo box. So it's the first warm-up game for the Lions after they arrive in South Africa, so the little bit of acclimatising they'll have to do, but between potential jet lag, there shouldn't be too much jet lag, but also just the altitude and getting acclimatised is kind of the factor. I'm sure it's actually something that Gatland will probably be pleased about having it, but we're going to see some chopping and changing of the squad over the next 2 games, because they have this game on Saturday, and then on Wednesday next they face the Sharks in Ellis Park as well, before moving on to Loftus Versfeld to face the Bulls on Saturday next. So it's 2 altitude tests, first against the Lions, this one, and then the Sharks over the couple of days, so expect pretty much the whole squad to be seen over the course of those 2 days or 2 games.
And Gatland was certainly saying that everyone should get a start over the course of the 3 games. We don't, as it stands, have the squads to hand, unfortunately.
We have the squads, just not the teams.
Not the match day squads. So there is we're still up in the air as we shoot this as to which way Gatland will go. He's obviously got some decisions to make in terms of the balance of getting things right. There might be a case that the best thing to do is to get the framework of the test team playing on the Saturdays to get into that rhythm. That's what they usually do, and then having the midweek teams in the interim. I think he'll likely go back to that model. So it's not improbable in my mind that he sticks with a similar sort of team that played but brings in the likes of Russell and the guys who've been missing into the squad as well. Maybe Sam Simmons getting a few guys to run out. But it'll be a nice second test for the Lions, and really just hoping to keep on course. Maybe some different personnel, but the same outcomes. I'm looking for line out solidity, defensive solidity, and
then ball in hand attack. What do they want to do when they have the ball? How are they going to try and move it? What's their shape looking like? All of that is going to slowly reveal itself over the course of these rather quickly reveal itself over the course of these very condensed games and these fixtures that'll be coming thick and fast from this moment on, because it'll be rolling over very, very quickly, and he'll have to kind of put the pieces together. It was, as we were saying, it was a very encouraging start against Japan. They performed very cohesively. They looked like a team with a plan. They looked like a fit team, a strong team, and
they were happy to pick offloads off one another. They did find it easy enough against the soft Japanese defence. Like, I'm thinking hard lines from the centres worked, and that was really all that was asked of the centres.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that continues. I mean, it's a very Gatland model. I think Jamie Roberts back in the day, Hadley Parks, keeping it simple, just big guys running hard lines, and then using your Tippericks as he would have done back in the day to access those extremities, along with the quality passing from 10. I'm curious to see if that shape continues, or if a Chris Harris, if he gets a shout, can bring something different. Are the centres going to link up, or are they very much sort of working a slow system?
Are we going to see dual distributing as the option? I know Faz is in there as ostensibly that role.
Yeah, he came in, didn't he, towards the end of the game, and it's definitely an option, and I don't know if he's written it off yet. I just feel like he might be leaning against it, from a defensive point of view. That might make sense, but they're certainly looking to expand the way they attack. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how they do it. I feel like against this Lions team, they can go any number of ways and win it, but I'm curious to see what they want to do in the midfield. Are they going to kick most of what they have? Are they going to try some set piece attacks?
Well, just certainly, I think they will be tempted to kick just because of the altitude. It'll be fun to see how far up in the sky. How much hang time can you get on a box kick? Can it be 9 seconds up there? Possibly. There's a lot of scope for kicking up at Ellis Park. As the Lions, the other Lions, the Emirates Lions kind of know, they'll know it a bit better. It's an interesting test. It's one that I think Gatland, just knowing him and like knowing some of the rumblings from the camp pre Japan game, were that they were doing a lot of intensive kind of fitness training and kind of weights training and stuff. Now here they are at altitude for their first two games.
They did altitude training.
They did altitude training as well.
I was seeing that on the little video they had. They had these little masks that they were wearing that were filtering in.
Gatland is always a man for that. So it makes perfect sense to me that the Ellis Park tests are falling here, or not tests, but the warm-up games are falling here at this part of the schedule, early doors, where he can get that in the bank and then go further south and just be acclimatized and no jet lag at all for his charges.
Well, the funny one is that apparently there's a chance that the games might be moved to Cape Town, so if that happens, obviously that will remove the altitude factor.
It will,
but obviously they have to act in for the time being as though that's not the case, and that's perfectly understandable. So the Lions are just looking to build on where they have been, put a bit more together, win comfortably, and work on some combinations. It's not rocket science. I think the teams on paper are something of a mismatch. For the uninitiated watching the Lions this year, like there's a few words that spring to mind. Loose is one, defensively wobbly is another. They are a fun team to watch. They attack. They're dreadfully inconsistent and they lose a lot, but they also put games together. And one thing that's been true is that club sides can often surprise you. In these Lions series, they often have some of their biggest and best performances. It's such an occasion to host the Lions as a club side that they do tend to put it all together. And when this Lions side puts it all together, they're flowy, they reach the extremities, they test the defense, they and then they're pretty ruthless once they get in behind you. They love the open air of Ellis Park. They run the ball really well. They've got lightning quick wingers, and they take tries when they're available to them, and they tend to have high scoring fun games.
They do indeed. They're often good spectacles up in Ellis Park between this Lions side and the bigger packs that tend to come with them. It's not a dissimilar test to what Japan were providing, probably from a British and Irish Lions point of view. Is just they're going to try and move it, they're going to try and find the extremities, going to try and run them around a bit up at altitude and try and see if they can't find seams. So it'll be a good test of defensive cohesion and kind of the contact area. The Emirates Lions themselves have named a 26-man squad. It features the likes former Springboks like Dreyer, Yanni Duplessis, Jaco Creel are all in there, which is kind of interesting to see. So there will be some quality.
Yanni is going to play against the Lions. He played for them in the Sharks in 2009.
That's right. Yeah.
So he's going to play against them again 12 years later.
A legend of the game.
Yeah, Yanni's great. And good to see him in there.
The last time the Golden Lions faced the Lions in 2009, actually it finished 74-10 to the British and Irish Lions, so hopefully this iteration
Brian
will be
O'Driscoll was in that team.
Yeah, that's true. Just in terms of form for this, the Golden Lions or the Emirates Lions, whichever you prefer, they started their Currie Cup 2 weeks ago. It started with a pumping at the hands of the Pumas, which is not encouraging, 39-10. They did get back on the horse and beat the Western Province last week, 38-12, but in the Rainbow Cup they were the weakest of the SAFA sides with only one win in the whole duration of it. One of their games was coveted, but they did obviously show their frailty in that one, couldn't quite string things together. And they do have a couple of beacons of hope. They have a 20-year-old out half who will probably start for them, Jordan Henrikse, who's recently usurped t'other fella who's been there, and Keith
Elton, of course.
Elton's
off to
gone.
France and now playing in the box squad, so
exactly.
no Elton.
No Elton available for the Lions. So yeah, they have this young 20-year-old flyer who's apparently got a very good, assured kicking game and good at playing the territory up there at the high altitude. And they also have Vincent Shituka, who's only 22 years old, and he's a back row star. They've really touted him for great things at the underage level with the Springboks at under 20 level, and he's kind of coming through. So some good players there.
I mean, any time you get a side that attacks, there's always scope for intrigue. And I think one area that Japan would isolate is that the Lions were giving up the outside of the 15 channel. Now they were in some sense kind of baiting them in and allowing the Henshaw shoot to get them. They were drifting really well whenever Japan did get to the extremities.
Matsushima like a hawk, recognising him as the danger,
and they ultimately didn't give up much. But the Lions will fancy getting the ball to the extremities and even dropping it on a toe if the Lions shut down that space, but just working the tram lines and really trying to disjoint the Lions defence. One suspects it's not going to be as uniform and reliable a centre partnership as Henshaw and Aki, who of course played club footy together as well as test footy. They won the league with Connacht way back when. Like there's some chance Harris comes in or Farrell comes in and it looks or Elliot Daly of course as well. It looks a little disjointed then again. So I think getting to those extremities, working that 13 channel, definitely going to be an area where the Lions look, and they are able to do that. They're able to attack.
Would be good. Yeah, that's definitely a key. We said it for Japan. If they can, it's the same equation. If you can catch. They're still chopping and changing. They still haven't quite found their feet, although it was a very encouraging showing against Japan. Yeah, get after them early. If they can go 7-0 up or something, that'd be a great start for them.
Control the territory with the long kicking game, the field, and run the ball when you can. Get to the outside. But it's funny how these things can snowball. Like if they have to defend for any length of time, they'll concede. They won't be able to handle the Lions, I don't think.
I agree.
And they're great. Like little things like a knock on in midfield when they're trying something could turn the game around.
Yeah, the aerial game will just have to be drum because the box kicks are inevitable. And the drops don't have to be inevitable, but if they become inevitable, then the scrums that become scrum penalties, that become lineouts, that become mauls, that become tries, all of that can just snowball very quickly.
Exactly. So they have to start alert if they're to have any chance of pulling off a shock and making it into a good game. So it's definitely a fun one to kick off the tour. I'm comfortable in saying that I think the Lions will do it.
Well, given that there's only the Lions playing,
didn't even register.
I'm almost certain that the Lions will win this game.
There you go. I'll go for the Lions.
Unless it's a draw, in which case no one wins.
The Lions of the British and Irish variety should be confident of a win here. Obviously we don't have the team, so we don't know what specific combinations they're going to be looking at, but in general just gelling more as a team. Hopefully some guys put their hands up and allow for a more interesting conversation going forward about who's in form and who's not. I actually would love to see them throw Falatau back out there because he had a rough showing to put his hand back up. And Sam Simmons, I know he's coming off the Premiership. He might be quarantined kept in reserve until the Sharks game. Might be the way they go with him. But the back row stocks are so exciting, and they're all such similar players that form is going to be a huge factor in who gets
Currie.
in. Currie, yeah.
Guy we haven't mentioned yet as well. There's all the well goes deep for the Lions. The Mish, who we missed out on as well. Yeah. So it's such a tight schedule, tight turnover, that you do want to get minutes under these guys' belts. You also just want to see pretty patterns. You want to see a bit of ambition with them. Rhys Sammet scoring tries. Both wingers got on the board in the first game. They'll be determined to keep checking little things like that off. You're playing good rugby if both of your wingers are on the board and you're winning games with multiple tries. And hopefully some pretty tries. There are very often some quite pretty coast-to-coast tries in Lions games at Ellis Park, so hopefully this is no exception.
Do you have a scoreline prediction? Ballpark prediction?
Quite a few to not that many. I don't think it'll be as big a tonking as the other one. What did I say? 74-10 back in 09. Nah. I think it'll be a little tighter than that. I'm thinking maybe 45-14.
Okay, yeah.
45-12. A missed kick from a nice corner touchline conversion.
I'd say 45-20.
I'm going to give the Lions more credit than I am.
Why not?
Yeah, okay.
I can do what I want.
You're basically taking the over on my prediction there.
Sort of, or taking the under in terms of difference depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
But it's a fun game to kick off the tour, and we're looking forward to that one on Saturday.
Absolutely.
Yes, and so wraps up the Lions for this week. Really, that's all that we have on the Lions for right now. They're playing this weekend. They'll be back against the Sharks. We may drop another vid in the interim, as we said at the top of the show. But we are going to park the Lions for now and move on to other matters international rugby.
Absolutely.
Starting with a fair that took place last weekend. The first game of the two-match series between the Maori All Blacks and Manu Samoa took place in an empty stadium in Wellington.
That's right.
After a COVID scare. The Maori, though, were not deterred and put together a real classic Maori All Blacks of the last 5 years. It was hey, Sean Wainui and Sean Stevenson and Ash Dixon. Yeah. It was really your Maori stalwarts.
Who's who of let's grab tries for
Ottery Black.
Ottery Black pulling strings. Caleb Trask looking excellent from fullback for them, pulling a load of strings.
He was looking great.
Chipping balls in, attacking kicks, linking with Stevenson was the beneficiary of a few of his nice little assists. Dixon with a nice skip pass as well for one of the tries, for the Wainui try that you're citing.
Yeah, no, it's just it was all the same heads that you'd usually see in that Maori team doing the usual business, although none of them ever get a look in as far as the All Blacks are concerned.
Yeah, and Jonah Lowe coming in off the bench as well on the right wing.
Think of the Maori All Blacks as a path to the All Blacks, but it just doesn't play out that way.
No, they tend to be their own little entity of a very, very good team that can score a load of nice tries, and they had way too much for Samoa. They tortured Samoa all day with the attacking kicks that they just seemed to never deal with. They were superior at set piece. Their maul worked well.
Samoa mixed it for a time. Well. I think the scoreline probably didn't flatter Samoa enough. They were definitely in the game in the first half. But it was just
they managed to. They bounced back from having that try cancelled on 20 minutes to grab one at 22 minutes to make it 7-all. That was good. They were playing their best stuff at that particular juncture, and then did ship a few nice tries to from a Maori point of view, nice tries, but shipped a few and went into the break 21-10 or 21-7 down. And then the big glaring error was kicking that 3 just after. They got a penalty at the beginning of the second half, kicked 3 points to make it 21-10, and that was them done scoring for the rest of the game.
A la Japan. I mean, could you not have got to 14, boys? Yeah. But anyway, they kicked to get to 10, and that's fine. And they lost the game, and it was sort of a paid by numbers Maori All Blacks showing, but they are always good value for money. Yeah. And an enjoyable game. No question.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed Jonah Lowe running to chase down his opposite number at the very end. The full-time whistle, just giving him a big hug. It was a good look for that kind of game. It was just a game played in excellent spirits, as it invariably is.
Yeah, and I think the whole summer between obviously these Maori games and then New Zealand playing Tonga and Fiji as well, it is going to be good vibes all around, and I think some good games and some good tries to come from this summer.
Good pre-match pageantry, always good in these fixtures as well.
Yeah,
but
they play again this weekend.
They do indeed. It's going to be Saturday, July 3rd. Mount Smart Stadium this time, as opposed to Sky Stadium in Wellington. Kick-off 4:30 local time, and it's going to be refereed by Mike Fraser. He will be the man with the whistle this time.
Mount Smart is in Auckland, is it not?
I think so,
I think it's in Auckland, so there are no restrictions on fans. They're going to have the crowd back in. And a bit of crack and a bit of pageantry, which always makes the Maori games a much better.
More you want that fanfare, you want that pre-tournament spine-tingling stuff as they're squaring off, and then you want some razzle-dazzle tries that both sides do love throwing the ball around. it's tough to see the Samoans kind of mounting that much opposition, given how well drilled and how fit those Kiwi boys look after their Super Rugby's Aotearoa and Trans-Tasman exploits.
The depth of all-back rugby is insane, and the Maoris would mix it with many test teams.
They would,
not just Samoa, who they have way too much for.
Yeah, indeed.
But a bit of fun pageantry there. There were other games that were actually of greater consequence, if not greater notoriety necessarily. Over the weekend, the South American World Cup qualifiers got underway.
That's right.
It was a game between Brazil and Paraguay, and pre-game I was a little worried about Brazil. Their
form has
club
not been
team lost to Paraguay's club team. Their form has been rather alarming. They had a shocking showing last year, towards the tail end of last year against Portugal, where they were just outclassed from minute 1 to minute 80. They've truly
in 2 games, so
to minute 160.
Yes,
They were completely outclassed in that little series, and they've drifted well behind Uruguay.
When you look back for those 3 years ago, when they were making trends on Twitter for that scrum that was marching those guys way back, and they were the powerful team in the South American competition, and that was intrigue.
Yeah, they just became the slow team.
They did from there deviate into just the slow team and had boys running, Uruguayans and Paraguayans running around them, Chileans. But on this occasion, they had too much for Paraguay. It was 29-0.
Yeah, and that's a good sign. I was going to say that is a very, very positive sign. And what I will say is that Duque, I didn't get a chance to watch this game. I'm not sure if I was even able to, if there was even a stream available. I think I vaguely looked for one and couldn't find one. But Duque, who I have seen play before from inside centre, he's a very fine player, very skillful, and apparently ran the show again. He's the best hope for
their
that
hero
team.
Both in general play and in scoring, because he takes their goals.
And he kicks drop goals as well. He's a fine kicker of a football and has some very slick passing to him. While not being the quickest guy, again, he is techerful, and I think he's a vital man to guiding that Brazil team around. And I'm looking forward to seeing them.
He got off to a good start. So Ostupis, as they are known, that victory sees them advancing in this Rugby World Cup 2023 qualifier format. And for Paraguay, however, that defeat means elimination straight up. So it's harsh, but you lose 29-0. Normally you're out in such is not.
I didn't have any money on Paraguay being at the World Cup, unfortunately for them.
No, unfortunately not. But that continues this week, Saturday again, a jam-packed Saturday for rugby fans everywhere. This is also taking place at Chile v Colombia as this tournament continues. That's going to be at Estadio Elias Figueroa Brander in Valparaiso.
Early days yet in the South American stakes and the American stakes broadly. Obviously Uruguay favourites, but Chile and Brazil will be duking it out to get into, I believe, the alternative qualifier between the North, the potentially Canada as well, I believe, or maybe the USA. It's ongoing. It's very much early days. We'll keep track of it as it goes, but one expects that this first hurdle for Chile will be overcome. Colombia still very new, really,
fledgling in the rugby arena. It would be a big shock, but
they're getting there. They have their first professional team as a consequence of the SLAR league taking shape, but there's a long way to go for Colombia, and I would favour Chile heavily. But sure, listen, I haven't seen that much of either, so I could be wrong. It would be amazing if Colombia just turned out to be unreal. We'll follow that with some intrigue, but I think early days we'll get the clutch games, the really important games, further along. Yeah,
absolutely. And with that, I suppose we'll pivot into some of the other games that are taking place this weekend. There's a lot of, the summer series is getting underway. We have a lot of really good matchups in the international arena, some good opportunities for tier 2 sides to face some tier 1 sides, as well as some kind of meaty clashes amongst the tier 1 giants as well. So we will get into that, starting with in chronological order, but also in terms of significance. We have the Springboks playing their first game since winning the World Cup in 2019, and it's against Georgia, the Lelos.
Yes, this is a game after my own heart.
It is a game after your own heart. It's going to be a Friday game, so Friday, July 2nd at Loftus Versfeld, kickoff 7 o'clock. I think that's local time, actually. It says it'll be 6 o'clock, I think, BST. It's going to be refereed by Mike Adamson, or Adam Mikeson, as you've called him, as you've dubbed him, of Scotland.
I don't like to speak ill of people. I don't know how he has a test game, but anyway,
that's all you need to say. I don't know.
Yeah,
it was on the basis of his Bristol Bordeaux showing.
That was one of the classics.
That game of a million whistles and no rugby. Yes.
God, yeah. Anyway, no, don't get me started. Why are you getting me started?
Because he's refereeing the game.
Why are you getting me started on Adam Mikeson? No, I'm not going to give out about him. No, this is a fun game. this is a fun game. So let's keep it fun. I'm looking forward first of all to just seeing the Springboks in action. It's so great to see that they're finally back. And there was doubts about this game going ahead, and when I was first reading those doubts, I was like, oh, they're never going to play again. Yeah, they're never going to play again. Springboks are done. Yeah, they're never going to play again. But thankfully, the game is going ahead, and we actually have an idea of what the teams are going to be as well. We have the Springbok team named,
which is excellent.
But I think there's definitely some intrigue here. It's the first of a 2-game series, which will take place over the next couple of weeks as the Springboks themselves build towards the Lions tour. And obviously I'm also interested in the Georgian aspect of it, which is like they're expanding their game, they're getting good.
They just were crowned Grand Slam champions last week when they beat the Netherlands, so it's a champion v champion. We have Rugby World champions versus perennial Rugby Europe champions,
and to decide which is the better competition.
Indeed, it's like in terms of the colour, that's what you got. You also have two physical sides, very physical sides, who like to play a pressure game based on power and set piece and physicality. Both sides like to play at a similar tempo, but then notably you have tier 1, tier 2 as a big gulf, because they are similar sides in terms of ethos and maybe even some of the physicality of some of the composite parts. But it'll be a big step up for Georgia, no doubt. But then who knows what we'll see from South Africa. They're a relatively unknown quantity in terms of mixing it with other teams. We've seen them play any of their teams play one team outside of the Springboks or outside of South Africa recently, and it was the Benetton game, and it didn't go well for the Bulls. Nope. So it's a raw kind of thing where they're kind of in an unknown place where it's like how high of a standard have we been playing at? They don't really know. So the point of these fixtures is going to be kind of re-establish winning ways. I think good positive results and momentum will be very important to try and carry through. But then also minutes for some key guys. Like it's a rotated squad.
Competition for places as well. I mean, the squad is actually fluid. They might bring other guys in. Marcel Coetzee could come in. Tyron Green from Harlequins could come in.
Yeah, he's looked very good.
My God, how good has he looked?
Obviously, there's no Colby, no Faf, no Big Dwayne in this particular team. You have Quagga Smith getting the start. You have Coach
I'll wrap through the team here. It's Oxenche gets the loosehead spot. He's an outside bet for the test for the matchday squad. He may well be back up loosehead to Kitsoff. Very fine scrummager. Bongi and Madambi needs no introduction, starting at hooker. Neither does Trevor Nyakanye. Very, very good quality. And that's one of the areas where there's massive intrigue. Like Melakidze has been unreal for Georgia, don't get me wrong, but it is a tier 2 comp, and so the battle between Melakidze and Oxenche is like box office for scrum experts. It's just box office. Where the Springboks might edge it is the phenomenal engine room, and this will bear so much fruit in the scrum game, I'd say, as well. But Etzebeth and Franco Mostert, World Cup legends.
Peter Steff back in the back row as well for more meaty heft in the back row.
He had a terrifying scare with an injury that threatened not only his career but his life at one point, or his leg at one point. A really bad infection, I believe it was. But he's back in. He's timed it perfectly because he hasn't missed a game.
Back on a pitch and back with a Springbok jersey on. It's going to be excellent.
Khaleesi's in there, as you pointed out. Quagga Smith gets the nod at 8. Cobus Reinach partners Pollard. That's a decent partnership. They've gone obviously not with Delindi Aram just yet. They're gone with the alternate Francois Steyn and Jesse Creel in the midfield, which is going to be interesting. And Speckman sticking it out in the 15s, Roscoe Speckman on the right wing.
Getting a bit of a reward with a nice Springbok cap here, and a chance to shine, because there's options like Willy Leroux is at fullback for them, and who's on the other wing?
Afalele Fassi, who's been brilliant for Sharks.
They have so much speed. We were talking about, there's like we mentioned it in the World Cup as an option, but we saw Ches and Colby lining up at 15 for Toulouse a few times during the season, kicking drop goals. He played at 10 at one point for them, so he's an option if they want to put him at 15 to get him playmaking and get two of their other lethal wingers who would otherwise be left out. Or Willy Leroux, if he starts lighting it up and showing some of the form. He was brilliant in Japan. He's back from top
Green
league.
Looks well able. Afalele Fassi himself, who's starting on the wing this week, can play fullback and spent most of the season playing fullback for the Sharks. So as in most positions, the depth is now emerging, and one of, as much as for Gatland, the task for Nienaber and Razi is to get the right guys on the field, because form is so important, and
Absolutely.
to have guys who are of high quality is going to be important as well. And this is going to be, it's not an ideal warm up. Georgia are not a tier 1 side yet, and as much as I'd love them to be, they're not there yet. So
maybe that's a part of why it isn't an ideal thing, because maybe they want an incremental increase in standard, and they want to kind of come in a little lower, but obviously with a match intensity, like Georgia have been playing a few games and they're recently crowd champs, and it's a good hit out against a physical side who'll test them that way. So it's all just building blocks, much like we were citing with the Lions in terms of their games and this string of warm-up games, all just trying to rediscover shape, patterns, bed in some of these systems and how they want to play, and then kind of build that. The equation very similar for the Springboks, because they played no rugby since the World Cup. It's a short form of condensed matches that they have just enough time to try and assemble their troops and try and rediscover their patterns, their shape, their systems, try and let them bed in. That's one of the big curiosities in this game, is just, will they start a little sluggish, and if so, how long will it take them to settle at all? Because Georgia may ask them some questions, may find problem or cause them problems if they're a little bit off at the beginning, which they might be.
I mean, from Georgia's point of view, I've always been they've always been a pet team of mine. I'm a huge fan of them, and they've had as good a run into the kind of test that this is for them, which is colossal and a mismatch really on paper. But to have that Autumn Nations Cup in the bank, where they found something defensively that they hadn't had before, they were able to, like this, and they were beaten in all those games, but they were able to shut down teams for large periods.
They found a good try against an Ireland side, and
they were abrasive in the contact, and they spent large parts of games defending their line gamely, and not giving up the same kinds of scores they used to. They looked well able for the physical battle, and then they've dovetailed that with their performance in Rugby Europe, which, while very much true to their roots at times, has expanded their game significantly, and
they've moved the ball much better. They have a young 10
and a young 9. Lobsondadzi's form is great from 9, and they're actually bringing tempo and quality, and then Tato Absendadze from 10 looks like, if not one of, if not the best out halves in tier 2 rugby. He looks
excellent right now, and he's been moving them about. They have some more speed. They have some really good young players, particularly at back row. They're embarrassment of riches at back row.
But Saganadze in particular, I talk about
Jalagonia and all of these guys. But on the wings now as well, and just even in the centres, they have more speed. Kveslads at 13, they just have more speed than they used to many years ago, and a new 10 who can find some of those guys. So they are developing.
And we want to talk about an 18-year-old fullback who looks lightning.
Unreal. Fresh off his hat-trick last week, wasn't it?
Niniashvili, if put in space, is as quick as Afalele Fassi. I think he's as quick as any of them.
He excellent in the open space,
and knows how to take a score if it's there. And so from that point of view, if Georgia obviously can marry the physicality that they've developed, where they're able to mix it with those tier 1 sides, with the more expansive play that they're trying to bring, where they can move the ball well and take scores well, then you could be starting to put together the nuts and bolts of Georgia, mixing it with tier 1 teams.
Which is exactly what they want, where they want to be in terms of, like, it's their national sport. They're desperately pleading with World Rugby for more of a fair shake. Obviously, the debate between Georgia, Italy, they're getting it. Well, this season has been great for them, starting with that Autumn Nations Cup campaign, and then building through the Rugby Europe Championship, and now with a test series, a 2-match series against the world champions. This is exactly what they want. It's a seat at the table with the big boys. Doesn't get any bigger than world champion Springboks. Those are literally the biggest men you can find in this game of ours.
There's quite a gap between the Netherlands and the Springboks as well, and the fear that I would have for them would be just the razor sharpness of the Springboks, and like that's the problem. Like their physicality is good. It can mix it with tier 1 teams, but can it mix it with world champion physicality? Probably not, and everything might fall apart if they start to lose collisions or lose them badly. And the Springboks are just another level of physicality.
Well, we saw in the World Cup, with their showings in the World Cup against Australia, and was it Wales they played as well in that group? I think it was. That they struggled because they didn't have a kicking option at 10. They couldn't really exit. They couldn't do anything. They were pinned back for most of the game, couldn't implement their game plan at all, and were ultimately kind of bullied by the team, by the superior kicking acumen, and just kind of just a few degrees off. They were noticing the difference.
Yeah, well,
their
defence wasn't great, and their attack.
Their defence has improved. That's another thing they've improved this year. Since the Autumn Nations Cup is just proactive defence. It never really made any sense that they were so dominant in collisions with the ball and yet very passive on defence and the defensive side of the hit. They seem to have remedied that. They have been more proactive with line speed and the hit.
Absolutely, and it needs to become for them a game about Tato Absendanza is going to be so important, because as much as they like to try and play expansive, the Springboks like to try and shut you down. And if they're a little clunky and they can't get any go for it on the inside, there's no sense trying to whip it to the wings or to Niniashvili because they'll be eaten alive. So it's going to have to be the boots of Lobsendanza and Tato just being much sharper, and Tato in particular trying to get on the front foot, forcing kicks in behind, and then the defensive job is to force the Springboks to kick it back to you and then engage in one of those battles, try and mix it up front. From the Springboks point of view, it is a great test for their pack, but one they should be confident of overcoming. It's like it is a decent litmus test of just whether you are what you remember yourselves to be. Like the Springboks that won the World Cup should make mincemeat of what is a very able Georgian pack.
Like they'll want to dominate and bully them at set piece, and they know that the Georgians won't roll over and let them do that unless they physically force them to by picking them up and shoving them into the dirt, which is the Springbok way.
Yes, indeed,
so they'll want to rediscover that in this game test. It's not dissimilar to what Eddie Jones thinks when he gets the Georgian pack in to scrummage against England in advance of big Six Nations games. There's respect there. They know that the guys can scrummage. They're physical. They're strong. They play a very similar brand to what the Springboks are playing. So there'll be an understanding there, mutual understanding of these boys hit hard. We both hit hard. We're going to have a physical game and probably get some good minutes under our belt because of it. Two games now against a game and a match sharp Georgia. That's what's on Georgia's side is the form, because they've actually played games.
And the squad is pretty well settled as well, coming through that Nations Cup and coming through this recent Rugby Europe Championship. They had a warm-up game for this series last week against the Netherlands. So where in previous encounters with Tier 1 sides they could complain of not being able to get the preparation 100% right, I think on this occasion
they have better preparation than their hosts. So they're the one. They'll hope to start the game really strongly and start quick and try and even get a lead going while the Springboks are kind of gelling and rediscovering themselves at international level. It'll take
it is in the lofty heights of Loftus in Pretoria, and that is a problem because altitude is not something that the Georgians would have dealt with before.
No, probably no.
They are big units and plenty of... It's not even excess fat, it's almost excess muscle that a lot of them have, where they're just very, very big, stocky guys, and when you don't have that extra bit of oxygen to suck in, they might find it very tough, especially towards the tail end of the second half.
It's tough to see the final quarter being Georgia's, as it rarely is when Tier 2 sides meet Tier 1. So it's the optimist would hope that in the first quarter they can find some success and make a game of it.
Nuggets, I'm looking here, the second test is in Ellis Park. I hope they move those to Cape Town. That seems unnecessary, but that's the real problem for Georgia as well, is that even if they do mix it, just the altitude factor is rough and it really does favour the
world champs.
So in terms of how it's going to go, like, it's definitely, I see scope for the Georgians to mix it for a while, but personally I think that as the Springboks warm to their task in the second half, I think they pull away and probably flatter the scoreline. Like, I think Georgia's good moments won't be reflected on the scoreboard as is often the way, to the extent that they should be, especially when faced with that Bok defence. Like they might,
although it'll be an Amless defence, it'll be
I know, but it'll be a Peter Steph full defence.
Yes, that's true.
Like it'll still be very
Tato could get smushed.
He could, like he's still a young guy. I'd love to see Niniashvili get in, and I'd love to see the Georgians get to the extremities and find tries. But I think like maybe one or two is possibly too much to hope for. That's what I am hoping for. But I do see the Boks as with the altitude factor and the Georgians being a bit leggy, pulling away, and something in the region of like a 45-14 kind of scoreline. Although with positives from Georgia, and it still wouldn't mean they're as far away as all that,
Well, I'll probably take the under on that. I'll say that the Boks only manage around 30 to 35 points, and that the Georgians manage 2 tries, 12 or 14 points, one of those. So
I'd
a little
say both
double
are
scores.
plausible.
Yeah, double scores for South Africa in the end, but not without some scutteriness and some squatteriness.
Of course,
and
if the Boks just rock up and
if they do what the Lions did to Japan and turn up and be cohesive, and suddenly they're playing their game instantly, well then scratch that.
You could be any number.
Yeah.
Could be any number. The Boks are that good.
They are that good. But I'm optimistic for Georgia. What I really hope to see is that Georgia have improved from from the Autumn Nations Cup even.
Yeah.
Because the Autumn Nations Cup, they showed their merits. They were a bit disappointing, and it was the scoreboard. They had moments of good play that weren't reflected on the scoreboard because they weren't clinical enough.
Yeah.
Now in this year, we've watched them try and expand their game, try and use more of the field, find some young talent out wide. I hope that's reflective on the scoreboard. I hope they find a couple of tries this time.
Yeah, well, the weather will be on their side. It will be. It's not going to be a wet ball like it was in the Autumn Nations Cup, and that'll help them because they can stick passes, but they're not good enough to really stick them.
The Autumn Nations Cup is is the caveat to attach to the Springboks as well. Because remember how down everyone was on international rugby a few rounds into that, and how bad some of those games were, and how lethargic all those teams looked when they hadn't played any. It was the first bit
a lot of these guys have been playing rugby. They have. Like a lot of them are not even South Africa based, so I think that like there's a tendency at times to overstate that.
There is. No, of course.
Etzebeth has been playing for too long. He's been doing a great job.
Colby's not available right now because he's undergoing mandatory quarantine. By the way,
he played the French
he
final
played
last
the final.
week.
But he will be back in the mix. He's not for this game, but
I should mention Malcolm Marks is on the bench as well. Stephen Kitsoff, France Malherbe, which is possibly the starting front row to come on off the bench.
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
And Visa is going to be an uncapped man on the bench as well. He's in there in the back row.
Marvin Orey going to get his chance as lock cover. The two Yankees brothers in the back line, along with Willemse as well. Makes up that bomb squad on the bench, which looks pretty powerful too.
Looks last quartery.
Yeah.
Tough for Georgia. So I think with all that said, I think I hope Georgia go well. I hope it'll be exciting to see the Springboks, the world champions, take the field again. What I really hope is a good game played in good spirits, same as always, and may the better side win. It'll probably be the Springboks.
It'll be the Springboks, but it's a great game nonetheless. We're going to move on now and look at another game. The All Blacks are getting underway for 2021, and that's always a big deal.
It is a big deal.
They're waiting in the wings long enough, but now as July rocks up, the All Blacks are in action, and we're going to get a chance to see the first All Black team that Ian Foster and his coaching ticket brain trust put together. And it's against Tonga. This is going to be also in Mount Smart Stadium, where it's
on the same day actually.
Where the Maori are playing Samoa. In Auckland.
It's the first time that's happened actually, that the All Blacks and the Maori play in the same stadium, same day.
Well, why not?
Why not? Indeed, doesn't seem strange.
A good celebration of Pacific rugby, I dare say, and Islander rugby as well over the weekend. But they're taking on Tonga. They're going to take them on on Saturday. That's at 7:05 local time. Damon Murphy of Australia taking the game from a referee's point of view. And I mean, listen, I don't expect a Tonga win, but it's definitely going to be fun to watch.
It will be fun to watch. The All Blacks have named an interesting squad themselves. We don't actually have the first team. It'll be released probably either by the time you watch this, but sometime later during the week. But there are some really good quality heads in there, and Sam Whitelock has been named to captain that side as well. A few ones that we know, your Ardi Sevillas, your Satutus, even your Patrick Tui-Palatus, Brody Retallick back in the mix, having returned. All of that's exciting. And then a few new heads, like Aumua at hooker, exciting to partner Taylor and Coles. That is definitely exciting. You have Ethan Blackadder, Ethan de Groot, 22-year-old prop, getting in there for a fresh cap. That'll be exciting as well. Another new cap, Ethan Blackadder, in there on merit on Crusaders form. He's been brilliant. Finley Christie as well, really good scrum half. I've been banging on his drum going why don't Leinster sign him? He's really good. That's my thought, if he's not going to get an All Black knock, but here he is getting an All Black cap, so maybe that's scratched now.
Bodie back in the squad as well, in the back line, your usual stalwarts. I don't know if they'll go for their full shout for this game, but I definitely think one of the things that they'll be looking to resolve over the course of this series involving Fiji as well, in advance of the Rugby Championship, is what exactly to do with that midfield. Now it seems like at the end of last season, I think that midfield was kind of at sea. I think Rico's confidence suffered really from the moment he dropped that ball over the line last year. He just looked a different man.
And yet he was so good for the Blues, and it was so exciting because he was what they needed.
And outside of that, at 12 and 13, they were just a little clunky. They weren't really. They were kind of nuts and bolts men who weren't linking well, and there just wasn't a threat through the midfield. There was neither brilliant distribution nor threatening running going on in that midfield. As good as Leonard Brown can be and good Hugh can be, it just wasn't working.
Mape can be, and all of these guys can be good, but it didn't quite gel in an all blacky kind of shape that really unpicks teams with devastating passing and distribution and all the things like that.
But Scott Robertson may have resolved the problem by moving David Havili to centre.
David Havili to centre has been a revelation. It's been one of the great finds of the season, and he finds himself in here now. Potential to mix with Rico and be a very, very fast distributing combination that could be very, very good. So and more options in that midfield. The other one they'll be wanting to resolve, and there are all kinds of headlines from stuff to Dakota NZ and stuff on the Bowden Mo'unga debate. What do you do? Do you play Bowden at 15? Do you play Bowden at 10? Or can you really drop Richie Mo'unga because he's playing brilliant stuff? What do you do with Damien McKenzie? What do you do with Jordy Barrett? What do you do with Will Jordan?
The stocks are crazy. In those particular positions, the stocks are just wild. It really is hard to fathom putting an A team together out of that bunch, because you can make a salient argument for any of them. Damien McKenzie was just a hero this year for the Chiefs. He was their talisman. He was everywhere. He was playing 10 and 15 simultaneously for the Chiefs, really. He was just doing everything for them. He was defending the backfield. He was first receiver. So it felt like he was passing to himself sometimes. He was just showing up everywhere, and he was coming up also with clutch scores, both from goal kicks and from tries. He was just constantly coming up with clutch plays and dragging that Chiefs team kicking and screaming all the way to an Aotearoa final. Damien McKenzie's form is incredible. He's one of the funnest.
His qualities are obviously there. Like, we all know how devastating he is. So do you do Bodie and him?
Well, then the other thing.
Then what do you do with Richie?
Jordy Barrett had one of the great individual performances I've ever seen this year when he racked up, I don't know how many points. It was like 30 points or something like that. Scored a hat-trick, was head and shoulders the best player in that Hurricanes team. Even Dane Cole's coming back was outshone by him at times. And then you have
monster kicks from 60 metres as well. He's got that in his locker.
And then you have the best 10 in the world right now in Richie Mo'unga, and the best player in the world right now in Bowden Barrett. And then that's not to mention how many times have I had to watch a highlights package and hear Nisbo go, "Will Jordan scores again," because then you're leaving out Will Jordan, and he keeps scoring tries. Tony Johnson,
that's Tony Johnson, is it? Nisbo's not doing that one. Okay, never mind.
But I could tell by the impression. It's Tony Johnson.
He just keeps saying it though. He keeps popping. But it's like the stocks, as you say, just
is there
ridiculous.
A case for getting the four of them? Is there any way you can get the four of them into a 23?
Like one of them at lock or something.
Maybe centre, I don't know. Like, it just in terms of just getting your quality out there, like, does it work? Could it work?
Is any of them a Ben Smithish kind of player who can just do it all?
Yeah, that's the thing, they're all specialists. It doesn't really work. I don't think you can play McKenzie at 13, or even Bowden or Jordy Barrett in the centre doesn't seem right. Mo'unga is an out and out 10. So it's just wildly good stocks in the 10 and 15, and any combination will work. For the record, I think you have to go with Mo'unga at 10 and Barrett at 15 for me, purely because Mo'unga's outrageous at the moment. He's just dragging the Crusaders out of the fire with just supremely good players, and I think Bodie is unique in his capacity to cover the backfield as well as be dangerous from there. His speed and his read of the game is on another level, even to Damien McKenzie. It's like McKenzie's not far off, but Bodie is just insane.
Do you keep him on the bench then? What do you do with
I think D-Mac above Will Jordan for me.
It's crazy stuff.
And Jordy, he's in there as well.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. And then the other one that I'm excited about is Brodie Retallick back in the mix. I'd like to see Retallick and Whitelock. May not see it this time against Tonga, but I'd like to see that band back together, because they are possibly the best.
If you're playing the Springboks, like, I know Brodie Retallick is great and Sam Whitelock's great, but how do you drop Patrick Tuipulotu?
Yeah, I know.
How do you drop him? Like, he was one of the best players for the Blacks last year.
Again, crazy stocks, but I do want to see that band back together. Maybe against this team, maybe in the East, because they have Pacific Islanders. You're going to see different combinations, but I do at least once want to see that band back together.
If you're playing the Springboks, I think you've got to start Tuipulotu.
Yeah, for Heft. Well, he's the incumbent. Brodie will have to win his jersey back for sure.
Yeah, and even Whitelock is, like, he's brilliant.
Well, Whitelock's captain.
Yeah, well, there is that.
He's captain, you know. So
what happened to the captaincy of who was captain last year?
Sam Cane.
Sam Cane, yeah.
What he's dropped.
He's out.
Is he
He's
out?
injured. He's out injured. I knew that. Yeah. So. Yeah, loose forwards are still great though, and plenty of jerseys up for grabs. Shannon Frizzell for the Highlanders, one of their best players. Kiri Ioane also fighting. Dalton Papali'i getting his chance.
Luke Jacobson's been
he
awesome
was brilliant
for Chiefs as well. Yeah, Hoskins Tutu we know about it. Kiri
Ioane, of course.
Artie, all of these guys, like really, really good stocks. Would you believe the All Blacks have some good players there?
It's so fun trying to
and then by contrast, I was reading an article about the Tonga, and apparently they couldn't select a few of their players for COVID reasons. So some of them they found like locally. There was a guy who's like literally he's 9-to-5 workers and stuff, and they're going to be playing the All Blacks this week. So it's kind of
and they're going to tear it up.
They're going to tear it up. They're going to be
world.
fresh from their day job to come in.
They're
and
not going to have
up.
any shackles of professional rugby on their shoulders, and they're just going to cut loose on the All Blacks.
Maybe in the pub after.
I tell you, Ben Tamifuna is a part of the.
That's right, and he's been playing top flight rugby.
He has been in the form of his life. I know Big Ben is kind of a meme because he's just so humongous looking, and he's kind of, you'd pick him out of a crowd in any scenario or any context. But he has been a man inspired in a Bordeaux jersey. I watched him against, I believe it was Clermont, break the hearts out of them by taking like 2, 3, 4 jackal steals every time they got in. He's actually dialed in the body position to get to be immovable.
There's so much of him that you're not going to shift him. So
his jackal game has been on point. His scrummaging has been great, and certainly he'll have to be leading that young Tongan horde into battle.
I was seeing Sam Moley, who's the younger brother of 4-test All Black prop Atu Moley.
Oh yes,
but apparently he was in a tool shed, and the Tongan number called him, and he picked it up, and it was the coach saying like, "Oh Sam, do you fancy playing?" So it's just you know,
and he did
fancy playing, and he will likely play. But so some would say this might be a mismatch, and it could be ugly for the Tongans, who are traditionally the biggest, strongest of the South Sea Islanders. Not quite the quickest, sharpest generally.
They're also they peak at World Cups.
They do.
This is the non-World
Cup season of Tonga, so we may see a kind of slightly rudderless entity against a bullish All Blacks who are gearing up for their own summer series, and then the Rugby Championship thereafter. I expect a bloodbath. Quite. I do expect a lot of tries to not many, if any.
If that squad's whatever they go with, if that team plays to its potential, they do rack up an almighty number on Tonga. But it is the first game of the season, so it's hard to know.
And it is a good spectacle. And alongside the New Zealand Maori game, it's going to be just a great spectacle at
great occasion
at Mount Smart Stadium in Auckland for just a celebration of Islander rugby and All Black rugby, and it'll kickstart the summer series for all the rugby fans down there in good style.
So on that note, we're gonna move on as well and look at our own charges. Ireland are doing battle in what is arguably the game of the weekend.
Arguably so,
against a blooded Japan team.
It's now a Tier 1 Japan team, fresh from the Lions. They got a hit out. They were a little rusty. They were certainly shocked by the physicality and the defensive cohesion of the Lions, but that'll stand them in good stead as they move to face a pretty similar challenge in terms of what an Ireland team will present, and then
similar and different. Ireland are this is very much a development squad that Ireland have named for this one. So this match goes on in the Aviva Stadium. It's a 1:00 in the afternoon kickoff on Saturday.
Nice curtain raiser. Carl Dixon will be the man in the middle, RFU thing, English lad. English
ref, indeed. It's obviously the first meeting since the win that Japan had over Ireland in the World Cup, but we don't talk about that. And then
it's now it's famous everywhere, historic everywhere, infamous here.
It was it happened. Ireland obviously going short of a number of players. They've named a squad. They've named their squad for the for the tour, and it's quite developmenty. Like it's that they're missing obviously their Lions, but they're also resting Johnny Sexton. They're resting Cian Healy.
Missing James Ryan through recent injury, as we were talking about. He was scheduled to captain or slated to captain, but I think he is going to miss this test. They were saying.
Well, I think they poured some cold water on that. I'm sure he will not feature in this week, but he was saying like he might be back, and it's an adductor issue, and he's not gone permanently, and he hasn't been stripped of captaincy or anything, but he might not be there, and so it'll be on the younger guys and the informed guys to put together and the coaches to put together a team, but to put together a performance that can deal with what is a very good Japan team. I mean, it's going to be fresh. I'm looking particularly at that centres. We obviously, as we're shooting now, don't have the team. Ireland notoriously late with the announcements. They'll name theirs on Thursday.
We never have an Ireland team.
No,
but we normally know it pretty well. But this one, as you say, pretty developmentally, it could go a few ways.
Well, we know that it won't be. It'll be an unfamiliar centre combination.
Because there'll be no Henshaw, there'll be no Aki, and there's no Ringrose because Ringrose is out through injury. So it'll be someone of McCluskey Hume, the Northern Chargers who are up there. There's Tom Daly, who's been excellent for Connacht all season. Chris Farrell for Munster, who is a more familiar face in there, which could stand like he might get the nod just based on that seniority alone. Obviously, McCluskey's been in and out as well. It could be McCluskey Hume. There could be a case for Farrell Daly. I kind of like the shape of that on form as well.
I think you might need it.
Yeah,
I think you might need it.
Well,
to
sit down. Like Nakamura and Lafayette opposite them. That's gonna be tough.
I'm a little scared about this game. I'm not gonna lie.
Just like the World. It's reminding me of the World Cup. I was scared of that game too.
Maybe Japan are still warming up and they won't handle the physicality. What I will say is that powerful forwards again can bail Ireland. Powerful and dynamic forwards.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Ronan Kelleher from Hooker. He's like a young man, but he's already feels like he's a leader.
Yeah.
He takes charge so well. Gavin Coombs, I believe,
he's
as of yet
awesome.
Uncapped, but
he's been awesome.
He looks like a future Lion.
That's what we were seeing. Like that they'll look to ride the momentum of their most recent showing, which was against England to finish the Six Nations, and they played a very, very good game, a game that was prototypical of what you'd like to see from this Ireland game. They were a little wider with their passing, their loose forwards were getting on the ball in the wider channels, giving scope to either pick a pass or pick a line. And even though some of those loose forwards like Jack Conan are off on lines duty, the likes of Gavin Coombs can play that game.
Yeah, Ryan
Baird, awesome. Like his sprint speed is phenomenal, and he's a lock. But he can do some damage if he's put into space out wide. Japan.
Josh van der Fleer, very senior figure. I would expect to see him feature as well.
So too.
I think in terms of the key areas that Ireland are looking at, the back row battle is going to be so vital. Obviously the scrum as well. But they don't have Cian Healy, they don't have Tyke Furlong. Nope. They can't expect to make mincemeat of the Japanese for scrum, and I don't think they will. But what they have to do is edge the carry game, is to play with a bit of speed and just to get on top of the gain line. And if they can get on top of the gain line and get some kind of rhythm going, that's where you can see the young guys get into a flow, get on top of Japan as the Lions did, go through phases and then exploit the disjointed nature of their defence. Like Lafayette was falling off some tackles, especially on the back foot. Trying to exploit that is key. And then the other area is, can they defend from the centre? I mean, I think 13 is the pivotal position when you're
whoever
defending
gets
Japan
that jersey,
as well.
it's so key, because Nakamura picks passes. Their whole midfield picks very nice passes, be either offload or skip pass. So you've got to sit them down, and they look to get wide. They do look to get wide. Now, it was Henshaw who is Ireland's best defensive player at midfield. He was doing a job on them for the Lions last week, and illustrate kind of showing the way, because his shoot was excellent for shutting them down when they were trying to get wide, and then he was very good at recognising Matsushima as the danger man, because unlike the World Cup Japan that Ireland faced, there is still a Kenki Fukuoka shaped hole in this Japan team, as we were saying.
And
there
is
a
like
lack of speed on that
go
left
away
wing.
from. I don't like, honestly, I don't know what the options are as far as their wingers. I haven't got the know how to say this guy or that guy. I just know that the lad they had in there was
not
wrong.
quick enough.
He was wrong. He wasn't right. He was too slow, and he's a centre by trade. So
they need wingers. They do need wingers on the extremities to find their tries. Matsushima, a huge danger for Ireland to have to deal with. So the defensive side of the ball very tough for Ireland. In this one, because Japan do ask you good questions, and it's going to be, if they're a little disjointed and a little off, Japan will punish.
Well, listen, if I was Jamie Joseph, I would have been thinking about this game in advance of the series, because there's some stakes going on here for Japan. We're going to talk a little later in the other news segment about the fact that they're sort of being looked at as potential for going into the Rugby Championship, but their form is being watched. And if I was Jamie Joseph, I would have been thinking, first game in 2 years against the Lions, chances are not going to go our way. But using that to get in flow and to get our hands on the ball and to remind ourselves of who we are in advance of a game against an Ireland team that is stripped of most of their first choice guys, that is the game I want to target.
Yeah.
And I think there's massive scope from a Japanese perspective to get on top of a fresh Ireland centre partnership, to start exploiting disjointed holes. And as good a defender as Chris Farrell can be, if he's not in sync with his inside man, if he overextends,
he can be a little slow on the turn. And definitely Japan are a quicker breed in terms of just their ranginess and their ability to find attack and find space. I like. It's tough to know. There's a nervous side of me that thinks this could be a tough one for Ireland. The optimist says that we have a savvy to know, like, they'll need to keep the ball and put them through phases. It's imperative of Ireland to have more of the ball than Japan if it's going to be successful, and probably more territory too, because Japan are the more lethal team in the open space. That's just true. So Ireland will want to dominate it by being the more tactically aware, the more savvy, and the more controlled in these exchanges.
And they will have to pass the ball wider. Like they were in the World Cup, they were very narrow at times, and they got chopped and jackled like teams do to us. I wouldn't expect to see that Ireland. I would expect, a young team. I'd expect to see Coombs getting on the ball just a little wider of the ruck, to link up with the likes of Baird and just to try and get on top of Japan. But ultimately winning that game line against the likes of Jimeno and against the likes of Labuschagne, that's going to be determinative of what goes on in this game. And it's definitely a major challenge. It's a tight game.
It's tough to see who will get the better of that. But it's just an unknown. Both teams are a bit of an unknown quantity in terms of we don't know what Ireland will take shape or what they'll look like on their first hit out. And in Japan, we saw them obviously last week. They're still a little bit shy of what we saw in that Rugby World Cup, so we don't know if the extra week will be enough to get them up to the speed that we know that they're capable of. But it's definitely a good match from Japan's point of view as well. They will obviously have a huge stern test. Their key men, like you were mentioning a few of them, Labuschagne, Jimeno off the bench. They also have
Jimeno should start.
He
probably should start. That's a mistake.
Yeah, he probably should. Tatafu, who came in, looked excellent as well. They still have Michael Leach. We were making mention of, do you want to spring him from the bench? I know he's obviously captain. One guy I would single out, as I did before, is Koo at tight head. Whether he gets the nod again, he, as I was saying at the top of the show, he's on a tour of the northern countries. You gotta expect adversity in tight head. He certainly got it from Rory Sutherland and co. He was buckled a few times. He was under pressure. He needs to expect to be under pressure again, and it'll be a learning test series for him in terms of just scrummaging.
Yeah, except to say, if Kilcoyne hits his straps, he can certainly put him under pressure. But if they go for an Ed Byrne or a Peter Dooley, Ireland, I don't think it's going to be like a necessary dominance for Ireland. Certainly, no. Ireland also have an interesting conversation to have around the halfback position. We have Joey Carberry popped up behind us because he needs game time. He's the guy who's really the only guy who has shown the potential to fill Sexton's shoes whenever Johnny does end up relinquishing the 10 shirt.
Yes.
And getting him key minutes, especially after his layoff.
Yeah. Especially, and he wasn't available in the World Cup. He is still the heir apparent because he's just got more quality than the other guys. He's shown more. He's got more in the bank in terms of having done it on the big stage. His performances in the Australia Test a couple of years ago were still fresh in the mind. He has top quality footy in him, so it would be nice to see him getting minutes. Similarly, we have good options at scrum half as well. Actually, I think the stocks are actually pretty good in terms of there's quite a bit of depth now.
Well, he's gone for youth. He's again shafted John Cooney, and that just seems to be the way we go.
Bewildering, but yes.
They do have a very exciting young lad in Craig Casey, who I'm looking forward to see. Caelan Blade's form is great.
Yeah.
And they're both of them about tempo and about moving the ball, and they both have good wide passes on them, so it is encouraging for how Ireland will approach this game.
Yeah, that they won't be running down blind alleys one out from the ruck like they were in the World Cup. Hopefully not, because they will be desperate to make amends. I know that they'll be crucial to just take their tries, even ugly tries, decisively, because in the World Cup, I know it was the talking point immediately after the full time. They only scored 12 points, which they got in the first few minutes, and then they couldn't break them down again, and it was like really not a display of clinical edge. It was much the opposite. So I think they will be focusing. It'll be weighing heavy on the minds of all of that coaching ticket and team to make amends for that game by taking chances. They'll want to be clinical,
but you also don't want to make the mistake that Scotland made in the World Cup, which was thinking you could go toe for toe in a firefight with them when actually they're the quicker and more clinical team. You have to wear at them and be smart and be physical as well. While at the same
you can be clinical in an Exeter-y kind of way, as opposed to being clinical in a kind of a razzle-dazzle All Blacks kind of dreamy way, fantasizing about all the pretty tries. A few maul tries will be key to them. And actually with Paul O'Connell coming in, it has been a renewed focus, set piece, line outs, tries, all of that. I expect, even with the change of personnel with Henderson and such on Lions duty, they'll still expect that line out, that set piece to be a key point for them. And it yielded results for the Lions last week. It's a tough one for Japan to defend against some of these big sides. I think, the bits and pieces of an Ireland game plan will be the ones that they're trying to iron in. They'll want to be good at set piece. They'll want to be strong on defence. They'll want to have a robust kicking game. And Japan have got to expect that as well. Because Japan are occasionally suspect under the high ball. And they've got to expect in the Aviva Stadium that it'll be raining bombs. And they will be, if they can defuse them, great. Because kick return will be the wheelhouse of the Japanese. Yeah. As we were, alluded, I can't remember the last time I saw Ireland score from kick return. However, Japan look lethal almost every time there's a loose kick to them. However, if they are a bit clunky and they're dropping those high balls, that's the cheap inroads that you don't want to give Ireland. That'll be a scrum in the midfield, that could yield a penalty, that could yield a line out further down, that could be a maul. That'll all equate to just more time defending, not enough time attacking. And if they're big back rowers, if Labuschagn's made 10 tackles by the first time he gets a touch, or Jimenez made 10 tackles by the time he gets a touch in the loose with ball in hand, that's a bad look for Japan. They'll want to start better than that.
No question. So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking it's a really good game. I'm thinking, like you were saying at the start, there is an argument that it's the best game of the weekend because they're two bloody good teams. Stylistically, it's very good. You got the intrigue, you got the story of the World Cup match as well. I'm going to do what I normally do and hedge my bets with Ireland because how so? I think we get on top of them with possession and ultimately hold the ball a bit more than they do, force them through contacts more than they'd like, convert some ugly scores. We probably won't be the good guys, but I expect them to be a little bit better drilled this time and maybe navigate the game a little better.
I hope so. I definitely think the Paul O'Connell factor is real. They need to be. I hope they're well drilled. I hope the coaches have been doing their work because I think this is a very scary game on paper.
It is.
I think playing Japan without your frontline players in a dry track in summer rugby, when they have the game, they've had the warm up game and you haven't, and you're going to be playing brand new combinations. It might be in front of a home crowd, but there's only going to be 300 or so at it. So I mean, it's not like that's a real factor. It's a scary game for me on paper. It's hard to evaluate Japan. They're so fun to watch. You're always rooting for them. They did fail to convert at their usual rate. They found some extremities.
Lacking. Fukuoka is such a loss. What a class player to remove from that team, and what a key asset in terms of what they're all about and what it all should be about is you have Matsushima one wing, Fukuoka the other, lethal on either side. Last week they were only lethal on one side and the Lions were able to marshal them, and now there's good tape for Ireland to work with. It's okay, less speed on this wing, watch Matsushima.
Ireland will have to be at their best, and if they are at their best, they should win. They should have a little more, as you say. I'm still extremely fearful, and I'm afraid to call it. Afraid to call it. I think there's definitely a picture in my head of Japan just being ruthless and quicker, and Ireland maybe naively thinking we can just go toe to toe with them. I don't foresee us playing the same game we played 2 years ago. No. But we might go to the other extreme and start throwing the ball around, only
throwing a pick or something.
Carberry is a good attacking player, but Farrell might struggle, and then all of a sudden, for me, that key 13 channel defence against Lafayette, there is scope. If we're out of sorts, there is scope for them to open us up.
There's also your concern for that Joey Carberry, despite having loads of minutes under his belt, has he actually played any rugby? Because every time I see him in a Munster jersey, they're just kicking.
They just play off
nine exclusively, and then sub him off at 60 minutes.
Well, it would be great to see him play from 10 and marshal a game and pick those corners and push Japan back and not let them into the game. That would be great. But I don't know. I guess I'll say Ireland win, but really I'm scared.
He's going to say he's scared, folks. And that's the hot take from that one. All in all, though, in all seriousness, it is a juicy
I was serious.
Game. I know. He's serious and it is scared, but it is probably just without even the kind of partisanship of it having our horse in the race. It's a really good game. Stylistically, for a rugby fan, it's a great curtain raiser for the weekend. 1:00 Saturday, early kickoff. you want to watch this one. Ireland v Japan, it's going to be good.
100%. On that note, we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at another game that's going on this weekend, and that is Wales against Canada.
Yes.
The Canadians are on the road out to the Principality Stadium. The referee is going to be Nika Amashikeli, who's a Georgian. He's also a unit. If you've ever seen him ref in Rugby Europe, he's the toughest ref in rugby. He will break you. And there'll be no back chat to him because he'll kill you.
He'll scrummage you.
Yeah,
because he's Georgian.
He's a big Georgian referee.
If the scrum keeps going down, he'll probably just say like this and get stuck in.
Yeah. So he's a big old ref, and I'm looking forward to seeing him get a test cap, because he's a rare example of a referee getting a debut test cap who I actually was impressed by.
Yes.
And he was involved in some of those Spain games where Spain were just throwing rattles out.
Oh, that's
crowds.
right. Yes, he was throwing red cards.
Well.
He was giving them the red cards that they were demanding for, punching guys and clotheslining guys and smashing guys in the air and all kinds of terrible plays.
Yes, indeed.
So it's good to see him getting a look in. It reminds me of like Matteo from Italy. It's tough sometimes for these tier 2 Maitreya to tier 2 refs. Obviously Italy technically not tier 2, but guys who are not necessarily from your Frances and your Englands and your things to get the test match footy. So it's good to see from that point of view, from World Rugby's point of view, that they are broadening their horizons. So congratulations to him. And Wales have named their team, actually.
Yes, good on them.
Good on them. Thank you, Pivac. It's going to be the first look at the Six Nations champs this summer. They'll obviously be shorn of their lions, including 2 fresh ones in Beard and Navidi removed. But still they'll be fielding a good team. Certainly it'll be captained by Jay Davis at 12. He'll be partnering Halaholo for this game, which is an exciting enough midfield combination.
Very good midfield.
And then just another layer of intrigue is that Byron Hayward, who was the coach that left the Wales setup in the wake of their kind of really terrible 2020, he was the one who's kind of ushered out the door in November, and he has since taken up a job with Canada, so he's coming back to the Principality.
Vengeance! It wasn't me!
It
wasn't me, you were just taking
so that
time.
Could either be good or bad news for Canada, I guess. It was certainly, we already know that correlation's not necessarily causation, but from November on, Wales's fortunes did kind of change rather seismically. The Six Nations obviously improved things. It's buried in the past now, just how down in the dumps they really were at the end of 2020, because it feels like a long time ago, because their showings in the Six Nations were so good.
I would say the same of Canada as well, where they obviously haven't had the chance to put their 2019 World Cup to bed, but there has been a fresh start. They have an MLR franchise. They have some MLR
obviously
guys,
some new coaching acumen in the coach's box. They were, for my money, the worst team at the 2019 World Cup. They didn't get to play Namibia, and it's a shame, because we were thinking Namibia have never won a game in the World Cup, and Canada were ripe for the taking from that Namibia side, but we didn't get to see it because typhoon actually. Feels weird. It wasn't COVID at all. It was pre-COVID. It was a typhoon, I tell you.
I remember when typhoons used to cancel games. Yeah. What a world. What a fun world that was.
Indeed,
Bring on the typhoons.
Yes.
That was also terrible.
Yeah.
But yes, Canada, brand new look to the team. Some old faces, but some MLR guys involved as well. It's a fresh start for them, and a daunting task, but really they're just going to try and gel, get some combinations together, and really just hopefully they put together some enough plays to bring encouragement ahead of the America's Rugby Championship and obviously the World Cup qualifiers, which are coming up for them. It's a pre-season game for Canada. They're feeling out their own form. But definitely I think positive signs. I just think that the fact that MLR, the standard has been raised in the MLR so much, like when you look at what the standard was in that tournament going into the 2019 World Cup
versus what it is now,
that's night and day, and that can only mean good things for the Canadian squad.
I would agree. And the US, like the same as what we were saying last week about the US being excited about galvanizing from this new injection of pace and just quality in the MLR. It's a professionalism that was sorely lacking in that North American kind of area, and it'll definitely raise all boats, so hopefully the Canadians will show something in this game. For Wales as well, it's kind of a hit out. They have a couple of tests. I know they're playing Argentina later in the summer as well, so this is also a kind of a warming up, brushing off some cobwebs. it's a good thing that the tier 2 sides are getting this exposure as well.
Yeah.
That's obviously due diligence from Wales, and obviously the US game against England is similar. Their team is an interesting one. You have a few, I've just rattled through it from Wales' point of view. You have Nicky Smith, Elliot D, Dylan Lewis making up the front row. You have Ben Carter and Will Rowlands. Ben Carter is an uncapped dragon, but they make up the locks. Ross Moriarty at 6 with James Botham and Aaron Wainwright make up the back row. Then you have Thomas Williams, Callum Sheedy in a very nippy halfback combination.
Yeah, class.
Davies Halaholo in the centres. Rogers, who is uncapped Scarlet but has been a good player,
yeah,
looks dangerous. Jonah Holmes from the Dragons, also a good player on the other wing. And Lee Halfpenny at fullback.
Lee Halfpenny, who makes his 100th cap, including Lions appearances.
There
this
you go.
week.
His 95th Welsh cap and his 100th cap overall. So huge congratulations to that guy. Legend of the game.
Totally deserved. Yeah, absolutely.
I hope they let him take the kicks. I'm sure they will.
let him try and stop him.
Indeed, yeah.
But especially Callum Sheedy's a 10. Halfpenny has to kick
Indeed, yeah, no, of
Sheedy's
course.
dodgy enough off the tee.
Yeah.
But no, that's a class team.
Yeah, and even some bench impact. You have Kieran Hardy, Nick Tompkins on the bench, Leon Brown, Garrett Thomas.
Yeah. Not
he's an uncapped Garrett Thomas. You know? It's a bit like Sean O'Brien for Connacht.
Yeah. Plenty of Sean O'Briens to go around. Yeah. Absolutely, Wales for me by a cricket score, but just I'm looking for just improvement from Canada and obviously Wales just to keep on playing that same beautiful rugby they were playing at the Six Nations.
We'd like to see if their attack can keep flowing the way it was flowing, then you could be in some very
points.
pretty scores. Yeah, they were, as we were touting them, the most ruthless team in the Six Nations this year. If they are to keep that going, that'll be very bad news for the Canadians, eh? You know,
the accent game is back.
It's gonna be a tough one, I tell you.
Yeah, that's pretty dead on. I would say somewhere in the region of 49-14. Why not?
Yeah. 49-14. Yeah. Maybe 56-3. 7.
Not 3.
56-3. Oh my god, it could be. Yeah. Well, if it's the Canada we see from the World Cup, then that is what it's going to be, and I'll be very upset. But hopefully, no.
I think they'll be better.
7 for the Canadians.
Canadians are on their way back.
Because Wales leak tries as well. There'll be a disjointed nature, maybe.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, absolutely.
But
it's going to be a non-intense friendly match. Like it's
much,
a different kind of game to Ireland Japan, I would say.
Yeah,
where there's danger for both sides. I think the result is determined, and everyone knows that. Yeah. Let's just have a kickabout and focus on our own priorities.
Pretty much.
Nobody injure each other. That kind of game.
That's the kind of game, and everyone shake hands at the end, and it'll be good for that. So that's both teams getting their summer underway with that one. Then just in other news, we're going to rattle off this briefly. Not a test match, but Uruguay are facing an Argentina 15, which is good to see. That's going to be at the Estadio Charrua in Uruguay. A kickoff at 3. That's again on Saturday. Great to see Los Terros playing a load of games. Great to see Argentina, who I've been very impressed with this year in terms of both with SLAR and the draft and getting the SLAR finished in terms of the club game in the South America. They're kind of bolstering that with their own academies and spreading their talent around, which is great. But also doing this, putting our Argentina 15 together to play more games against, get better hitouts against for tier 2 teams.
I'll tell you something else. The talent. The amount of talent coming out of Argentina right now is scary.
Yeah, they're just churning it out.
Yeah, there's so many quality players. You'd think there'd be a limit to how many quick, skillful guys they can produce, but there doesn't seem to be.
Nope.
Yeah, the Argentine rugby is in a very, very good place.
It is.
Matera antics notwithstanding.
No, indeed, obviously, all of that.
It might be in its best place ever. Yeah. Just in terms of the depth, they've just beaten the All Blacks. I think they're putting together a plan for a World Cup, for a real go of it at the World Cup this time around, and I wouldn't want to be facing them. Yeah, I think they're potentially a very good team, and the squad depth levels are getting scary. They have real quality all over, and I love to see them bigging up the rest of South American rugby. I think they understand that long term, not short term, but long term, they'd love to get to a place where they can play their rugby in South America and be assured of a decent standard.
Not have to travel around, because you see the difference in them when they can camp for a World Cup or for a Tri-Nations last year. They can stay in one place for a few weeks, get the squad together, get the game plan going, and then go and beat the All Blacks. The sky is the limit for Argentina.
And every other year, every other non-COVID year, they've had to go away to South Africa, then home to South Africa, which is just like a bonkers travel for 2 weeks, and then away to Australia, and then home against New Zealand, then away against New Zealand. It was dizzying.
Yeah,
the amount of
indeed,
travel.
literally
They were
dizzying.
permanently jet lagged.
I think there was one graph that showed, I think it was Matera had circumnavigated the globe like 6 times in one season, which is just like, what?
He's just spending his life on a plane. They have a permanent state of jet lag, and so to put that to bed long term would be great for them. And I do see that they're angling. They want a big upset American rugby.
They're building things.
While winning.
This is true. So that is taking place. But then the other game that is taking place from an Argentinian point of view is they are travelling to Romania. Also on Saturday the 3rd, they're facing the Romanians at the Arco de Triomphe Stadium, which is the hotly contested, controversial stadium that the
here's
Romanian...
hoping this one actually takes place in the Arco de Triomphe.
Yeah.
The Romanian government is determined to annex this little thing. They are not backing down, so it's an ongoing drama, but as it stands, this game will be played there anyway, and Romanian rugby continues to be
annoying,
a little bit depressing when you look at it.
They built a brand new undersoil heated stadium so that they could get their club sides into Europe and that they could play international matches, and then no sooner had it opened than the sports minister was like, here's perfectly good stadium, why not take for football? I don't know if they have the true backing of the Romanian public. I don't know the situation. All I know is that like it's hard to imagine that 10 years ago they were pushing Scotland for a result at a World Cup, and here they are now,
really floundering. And I tell you, if the improvements in rugby in the likes of Portugal, the likes of the Netherlands, who we were seeing the other week, continues at the current rate, and Romania don't get their act together, soon they could find themselves in a hole where they're fighting for relegation instead of World Cups. You know?
As it stands, they managed to get that result against Portugal, although narrowly, and they're still in the mix for the World Cup. But they aren't assured. Like Georgia are assured. They're in the mix with all these other teams.
And maybe I'm a bit too negative. Maybe they'll pull stuff out of the fire, and they still have some decent players.
It's just crazy to me because they have more of a tradition in rugby than I could ever saw. And I'm no expert in football, but it's like Romanian football. What? You know?
Yeah, well, they did in football. I think they went to some major tournaments anyway. Sure, didn't Ireland beat them in a 1990 penalty shootout?
That's right.
And that was in a knockout game. So they have history in both, and they're looking longingly on the history in both sports, I think, as opposed to the present.
Yes.
But Romania are playing Argentina, and it's good of the Pumas to go down, although not so good of them to name such a fiery, strong squad.
This is the debate. It's like, leave in the comments, should the Argentina XV be facing Romania while Argentina face Uruguay, or the other way around?
Yeah, it's weird. It is definitely weird, because Uruguay would probably beat Romania. Well,
Uruguay were at the World Cup.
They were, and they won against Fiji.
They won against Fiji.
Like if
Romania weren't at the World Cup.
If you can beat Fiji, you can beat Romania. But the only other thing, the only caveat I'd attach to that is that the Rugby Europe teams to a team are a lot more physical than the South American teams. And in the matchup between Brazil and Portugal last year, now I know it's Brazil, Portugal were like night and day better, and there's definitely that factor. But that said, Uruguay are in great stead. I think Uruguay would beat Romania if they played, and they probably should be playing the Pumas.
Yeah.
But Uruguay will be thankful for that more than Romania, to be honest.
Yeah, to be fair. From a Puma point of view, it'll be good to see them back in action. First time since an historic Tri-Nations, although marred by some controversy notwithstanding. But Montoya, in the wake of said controversy, Julian Montoya, the effervescent number 2, has taken up the captaincy role, so he will be leading out the charges.
Effervescent? Did you mean ever present?
No, effervescent.
Okay.
And he's always shining for them. He's one of their. To be fair, he makes good sense. I actually, when they announced that made all the sense, because he is a stalwart. He starts
try scorer, and
Andy is ever present.
And they have a good history at hooker. They have Creevy was the previous captain. It's definitely a good position to captain.
Well, traditionally when talking like Mike Ross nerds out about the kind of spearheading and Keith Wood as well, talking about the old school Argentinian scrum that came all the pressure through the two like an arrowhead and very tough to deal with, and he's good at that too. They have a good scrum under him. And then some serious stocks in, like Matera, despite being stripped of the captaincy, he's still there
and world class. He hasn't stopped being world class just because people stopped liking him.
I'm sure he got signed by the Crusaders instead. Lavanini being picked in the squad feels a bit like regression to me, although he's there again.
His form has been okay, but at the same time the guy is still
time bomb,
crazy
red card man.
Hopefully
Manu and Pitt
just learn your lessons. Like Val Mahina isn't playing for France anymore because of what he did at the World Cup, Lavanini, it should be kind of similar. He needs
red
to,
card machine.
He's
Get him out of
just a
there.
crazy man. He won't stop. There's no stopping him from giving cards away, so get him out of there. But there are still options. Guido Petty for one, although he has been playing in the back row a lot, Guido Petty. But Alamano,
Kramer plays lock too as well, they have stocks.
They can cope without Lavanini.
They have back row stocks. They have Bruni, they have Matera, they have Facundo Isa back in there as well. I was just looking through their thing, like the outside backs as well. You have loads of good ones. They're just a really, really good rugby team. They do, like, it's tough to forget. Like, it's a lot of rugby has happened, but they were really good in that Tri-Nations. Their defence was very, very solid. Their attack wasn't quite as flowy as it might have been. This might be a chance.
They were a little uglier than they usually would be, but they were very, very good defensively. Geez, if they bring that defensive energy, the poor Romanians will not know what hit them.
No, they will not.
Romania will just kick everything and hope to defend, and it won't work. I think they're in for a tough time.
Orlando, Buffelli, Carreras, Imov, Delgui.
Yeah,
remember Delgui? He's awesome.
Imov, like
Cordero.
Imov has been injured. I'm glad to see him in the squad. He I'd love to see him back to his flowy best. You have exciting guys like Chocobaras, De La Fuente to partner your Orlando. Chocobaras straight off the Top Couture's winnings. I don't think he'll feature this week, but came into that Toulouse squad and was excellent. Yeah, indeed, brilliant addition. It's just the Argentinian stocks, as you say, they keep churning them out, and they're in rude health. And from a preview of this match point of view, it's similar to the previous one. It's going to be a mismatch. Hopefully it does go ahead at the Arc de Triomphe and they can host them at least in proper facilities, because the last time they had to move a match, it was down to some terrible pitch. back pitch. Bog. Yeah, you don't want to see the Pumas togging out in the prefab next to the pitch, It would be nice if they were in the National Rugby Stadium. That would be great. That would be great. But what National Rugby Stadium? All I see is a football stadium. It's another good one for Tier 1 v Tier 2. Good hit out for Romania. They have key World Cup qualifiers coming up in Rugby Europe and beyond as well, so it'll be a useful kind of thing just to kind of expose yourself to some of the things you might be expecting. And then put it to get bed, because frankly Georgia would get crucified by this Argentina team and have done. So I wouldn't worry too much. I wouldn't sweat. Just take it for what it is, which is a good hit out against a really top quality team. And a chance to host said top quality team. So Exactly right. But that is that's Argentina's two little games of the weekend, and one of the nations that can just afford, like New Zealand, to throw on a couple of games and win both with all the stocks that they have. But there's also the small matter of Eddie Jones and his charges, who are going to battle this summer against USA and Canada, so not exactly not going to battle so much as togging out. I think it's a get back to winning ways. Obviously, ostensibly it's good inclusionist stuff to be giving the Tier 2 team a bone and throwing them some games, but literally from an England point of view, they need to arrest some momentum, because their Six Nations was terrible. They went from an imperious, unequivocally the best team in England or in Europe last year at the tail end of 2020, having won an underwhelming Autumn Nations Cup. Then they went into the Six Nations and the wheels kind of came off. It started losing at Scotland and it ended losing to Ireland, and in between bad stuff happened as well. So I wasn't panicked about England. No, not panicked. Honestly, I thought they were coming. I know they had that bad defeat to Ireland at the end, but honestly I thought they were closer to getting things right at the tail end of the Six Nations than they were in the Autumn Nations Cup beforehand, which they won playing an ugly anti-rugby style in the wet that was just working because they made fewer errors than their opponents. Then they got found out and they got punished and they had to reevaluate, and Scotland, we all have Scotland to thank for that. But they ended up playing some better rugby. They still are full of talent, and I'm just watching the Premiership this year, it has been a joy. The amount of talent that they have, and the stocks they have to pick from. And that's going to be an exciting part of this summer, is just some of those guys finally getting that look in. Marcus Smith, this guy is pushing Owen Farrell. He's a sensation. He's certainly pushing George Ford in my mind, if not pushed out already. Well, Ford is grand, but Smith looks special, really, really special. This guy could be the next best 10 in the world kind of special, because the vision is great. His read of the game is sensational. He's such a mature head on good footwork, good evasiveness. Yeah, but what he has that no other out half, even Finn Russell at his most dialed has it, but just the sheer quality of pass. Off the left and right hand, the guy can throw a 20-metre pass, and it's a flat bullet and goes exactly where it needs to.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, it's certainly over the course of that Bristol semi-final and then the final against Exeter. Some of the passes,
even in the regular
just a compilation
season,
of some of the passes he's been finding has been, he's been been on the money, dialed in, and finding the likes of Dombrandt in a big hole and all this, and putting some good runners through.
Dombrandt is another guy who I want to see get the jersey.
Some minutes.
There's only so much you can learn from the Fords and the Billy V's on a tour like this. You want to blood some of these guys who are going to be huge at the World Cup, and Eddie Jones needs to put to bed his I have a squad in my mind idea that seems to have been in his head, because that's the one criticism you'd hold. Doesn't work if you're England, might work if you're another country, doesn't work if you're England. You've just too much quality to ignore. There's just like there could be 15 new guys who are the form guys come the next World Cup, and you have to appreciate that.
It's true, but
the players that they have are just so exciting. I'm just looking forward to seeing some of them getting test jerseys.
Yeah, indeed. Well, who do you have? Exciting guys. Obano in the prop in the front row.
Obano has been in there.
He's only got one cap so far, and then a few other uncapped, Hayes and Davison up in the front row unit. You have a few complete unknowns at hooker as well, because obviously both their hookers are at the Lions tour, so there'll be some good chopping and changing over the next few games in that jersey. In the second row, you have guys Munga from London Irish, who's in on form, who hasn't got a cap yet. Obviously Ewell's more known, McAnally and Wells in there, so new look in the pack, from a chance for some fringe guys to get some minutes in the test shirt, which is good. Their back row stocks are ludicrous. You have the two Ludlums, you have Underhill, although he took a knock. You have Hill, Kenningham has been brilliant for Quins, Ben Currie, know.
But Dombrandt's the one that stands out for me. Get that man in the test shirt as soon as possible. I know he played the final last week. You might want to give him a rest this week, but it's the USA. Just play him. I'd love to see you get him out there. There's talent to burn. Even Max Malins, who came in at the Six Nations, I would like to see get in. And
Marchand, I'd like to see given a proper run out and maybe given the ball.
Marchand
given a run out and perhaps a pass or two.
Well, that was the Ollie Lawrence factor at the Six Nations when he came in and wasn't given a proper chance. But he has, in my mind, been circumvented or usurped by Joe Marchand.
Both are in the squad, but Joe Marchand has been brilliant towards the tail end of the season as well. And you got Smith and Umaga. Umaga, the Wasps fly half, is the other fly half in there, so it'll be a rotation of them. Obviously, I think Marcus Smith, having just won the Premiership with Quins, is in the driver's seat with that one. And a few nippy halfbacks in Mitchell, Randall and Robson, all in the squad as well. So it's
good to see Randall get a cap as well, because he's obviously got a high enough ceiling as well, I'd say. But there's just talent to burn from an England point of view, and very much looking forward to seeing those guys in the mould and doing their thing. I think if they click and the talent the most talented guys play, it could be a long game for the US. But Gary Gold's team, the USA, I think are like
a coming force.
They're certainly a coming force. It's a tough ask going out to is it Twickenham they're playing them this week? Like that's this game actually, is either
it is Twickenham, and it's Sunday actually is this game, July 4th, kick-off 2:00.
Andrew Brace in charge. Absolutely. But I like this game notwithstanding, however tough it will be, I just think it's very, very, the US is very, very exciting right now. Major League Rugby is very, very exciting. There has never been as many US players playing to such a high standard,
professional rugby. All of them are professional contract. It wasn't even 10 years ago that the US were fielding a team, some of whom were amateur status. So to think that that's changed as much as it has, and then to think of the progress and the fast progress that their sevens team made once they started taking that seriously. Couple that with the MLR has increased in standard this year. That is an interesting factor about this. We're obviously touching the MLR later on. It's still going ahead, and it's reaching its denouement in the season, and a whole hell of a lot of this squad are contracted to MLR teams, some of whom are in contention. So that is
it's wild.
It's going to be something to consider going forward. Like the MLR is an outlier in terms of their finals only get underway on the 25th of July, I think is
it's a weird schedule.
It's a weird schedule. They'll probably have to fall back in line with some of the other seasons so that they're not clashing with this summer window, because obviously it's moot this season, but this is probably something they don't want to repeat.
I agree with that, and I don't think clubs are allowed to keep guys out during test windows. I'm pretty sure World Rugby prevents that. It's not allowed. Now when it's not a test window you can take them, but no, they'll have to give up their players, and that is a shame for the likes of Nola Gold, who are pushing for a jersey, losing their captain Cam Dolan.
Yeah.
But it's exciting it's exciting for the US to put this band together and see how they do. I mean,
fresh off professional rugby for a season.
Yeah,
like
fresh, good standard. Like, they had this league before, but the Guiltinis have pushed it up, and there are some exciting players in this squad. You've got I knew from Toulouse coming in
as a top Couture's champion and a European champion.
Joe Taufete'e coming in from Lyon, who we know all about, and married with a load of exciting MLR players. I mean, Luke Carty, Jack Carty's brother from the Guiltinis, like, Giddo gets the headlines, but he's been playing 10 as often and pulling as many good strings in there. He's potentially going to get a run at 10. They are missing Adge McGinty, which is a shame for a match against England. Like, in terms of being truly competitive, they could have used him. But there are very, very exciting players. Cam Dolan. Look out for Mikey Teo as well, because if you've been watching any MLR, like, he's obviously got a number of caps to his name, I think 28 or something to this date, but his form is incredible. He's got that sightsee swagger, he's got like a serious footwork on him, and he just makes things happen, drops into first receiver. Like, he has a lot more space than he'll be afforded at England, and it might be shocking, but he's so robust and physical in the contact that I don't expect him to be... even if he's caught, he's not going to be truly caught. He's a very, very exciting player at 15 or on the wing, and I'm looking forward to seeing him take battle. And I definitely think there's scope if they can put a good team together for this USA team to really explode. If not over the next year, then potentially by World Cup cycle or even into the next cycle. There's talent. Think they're a moving force, and they will
certainly
become...
I hope that they will be no less physical but quicker and more accurate team than they were in the last World Cup, and I'm pretty certain they will be. Now, that being said, in the context of this game, it'll be a bit too soon for all that, I reckon. I think
early days.
I think it's early days, and I think Twickenham's a bit of a bridge too far. This could be a bit of a one-sided affair. In fact, it will be a bit of a one-sided affair. But as you say, it'll be good because they're fresh in off a season as well. There shouldn't be any issues in terms of fitness, but there could be issues in terms of cohesion.
Even cohesion, like, they're all playing in the same league. I think they're all going to be on the same page. They're all used to playing a little quicker. They might be a little shocked by just how much more physical England are than what they get in the MLR. And I definitely think there's truth to that. Like, Matt Giddo and Adam Ashley Cooper would not be pulling the strings in the Premiership. They'd be blown away by the physicality.
They probably would.
Their bodies would be broken by it.
Probably.
But they can move the ball, they can cause problems, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they look like. Whether they play with more patterns, more screens,
just more speed, more width in general.
I think they will. I'm looking forward to seeing a new, fresh USA team, not about power and trying to mix it for 40 minutes, but actually trying to move the ball and create things and ask questions. And at some point over the next decade, they will be the fastest growing team in world rugby. I'm quite certain of that.
Yeah. I think that's with that all said. How do you think it's going to go?
Well, England win. I mean, I don't know who England are going to go with, whether they can or feel they should go with the Premiership finalists from last week. They might leave Marcus out for this week and go with Jacob Umunga, and then maybe who knows, but no, England have got talent to burn, and this squad is full of talent and will likely put on a show and put some scores together, like somewhere in the region of, well, do I have to pick a score? I haven't seen either of these teams.
I'm going to say about a 25 to 30 point winning margin for England is about where my head's at, and hopefully that includes a couple of nice USA tries. That's all I ever hope for. It's just a couple of tries for the tier 2 side.
Something to build on.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But that wraps up the summer series of internationals, but we do have some Rugby Europe stuff to attend to, because it resumed. The action resumed last week with Georgia welcoming newcomers Netherlands up into the relative big boy leagues, having just won a tight game against Belgium in the playoff. That game finished 48-15 in favour of Georgia out in Telavi. They completed their Grand Slam. It was in emphatic fashion. 48 points is a nice amount to score. 15 is not a bad amount to score for Netherlands in their first game against perennial champions.
They got to try towards the end of the first half to make it 10-8.
Yeah.
It was definitely game on at that point, and you could hear the crowd going... It was like a 100-meter try on the break. The winger went darting, and the Georgians were like muttering.
Yeah.
But the Georgians did turn it on in the second half and actually ran a really good game. And as we were alluding to earlier, really have expanded their game. Winger on the board twice,
Nini
fullback on the
Ashvili.
board for a hat-trick, 5 tries between those two. Like that's just
good. That's not something you would have said about Georgia even 2 years ago. So that's palpable signs of progress for both, to be honest. It's too much power from the Georgian bench for the poor Netherlands to cope with, which is understandable. They were able to turn the screw a little bit and lean on their experience in the second half and kind of pull away. And sure, now the Georgians themselves are travelling to ready to take on South Africa, as we were talking about. So that's interesting for them. But for the Netherlands, I think they'll take solace with the fact that they were in the mix at halftime, that they grabbed a nice try. They scored 2 tries against the best team in that competition, and now they have a week off this week, but the week after they face Portugal, which will be a different test, but it'll be one that they'll hopefully be ready for now, having better day.
On initial evidence, I certainly think they're worth their place in the competition.
They might overtake Spain quick enough, you know.
Well,
you never know.
In the main, we do have a big game coming up now in Rugby Europe this week.
But also congrats to Georgia again, I suppose. Yes. We always forget that it is, Grand Slam champions Georgia, housekeeping.
They did their celebration, they lifted their trophy and all is well in Tbilisi ahead of their 2-match tour with the world champs. But there is a huge game in the context of the World Cup qualifying coming up now this week between Spain and Russia. Big game for both sides.
It's going to be Saturday again. Everything's happening Saturday this week, but July 3rd, Estadio El Pantado in Alicante, I should say. It is a huge game. It's a huge game for both, but neither team has really had it their own way. We were following the Rugby Europe Championship in its first stanza, and Spain really have taken the cake as the worst looking team in it so far, without a doubt. With the discipline costing them, with some crazy red cards you'd never see the like of, which they were so loose. I'm remembering the one where it was a crossfield kick and their man just absolutely clattered the potential receiver, and the ball still had another couple of seconds of hang time before it even reached the turf. So early and ridiculous was the hit. I don't know quite what was going on in the messaging, but they've only managed to accrue 2 table points for 3 games played, which is pretty poor. Russia, however, have managed to accrue 3 table points, but
four.
Was it 4?
They have a win,
and they have a win, but they've only played 2 games.
That's right.
So Russia in better standing objectively.
One of which against Georgia. They have a win that they got against Romania,
and then a losing bonus against Georgia.
No, just a win.
No, just one win. 4 points.
No win. For 1 win for 4 points. But what you would associate with Russia, they are physical. They are defensively sound. They're disciplined.
They'll kick points. They'll punish your ill discipline. That's certainly what they did for Romania in that game. They were kicking very good kicks from all angles. And if they're the team that'll punish ill discipline, Spain will definitely need to rein that in. Whatever they were showing, whatever they were drinking in the first half of this year, they need to put it away, get back on the water, and cool the jets, because they were absolutely near psychotic on the pitch sometimes.
And they're just there's concern around Spain. Heading into this, they were full of bravado and talking about putting on a show and being following the Japan model of being a quick, exciting team, and they certainly had the talent to do that. But they looked so utterly rudderless and so lacking in coaching, and they really didn't play with any speed, and they were just outplayed by Portugal earlier in the year. Portugal showed them up for actually doing the hard work and being together as a squad
and being quick and accurate and ambitious and all of that stuff.
Things aren't as right in the Spain squad. They've had issues in the build up to this. They've had a number of players actually who are based in France, so important players like Ordas at 10, who's not in there. Gibuin, Usaraga, Rue, the 9, really good player. Mingilon, Mali, a number of first team players, about a third of the starting 15 really. They're not returning. They've been playing in France and they're just not showing up. They're not able to. They've had issues with acquiring players at this time of the year before, after the French season. But even for a game like this, with everything on the line, if they lose it, their campaign is pretty much dead. For the World Cup. They can't acquire these players, and I just don't know if Spanish rugby is in a healthy place at all. I mean, if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said every chance that they qualify for the World Cup, but now they're in dire straits and their backs are firmly to the walls. So they need to deliver. They need to be quick. Russia, the one thing I'd say about Russia is that they score slow. They will be physical, they're difficult to play against,
but
they'll punish your errors. If you're indisciplined and you're all over the place, they'll kick their kicks and they'll make fewer errors than you, and that'll be fine. But they don't score tries.
They have
Spain
very little
scored
speed.
tries.
They do have very little speed. That's what I recall from watching Russia, is that they're pretty well disciplined,
and
pretty well organised.
Their defence is
good.
At
defence is
this
good.
level,
their physicality is pretty good, but they are slow. Fundamentally not quick as a rugby team. And so, they struggle to get around teams, they struggle to get through teams. But they probably have shown a bit more nous, a bit more savvy, and certainly a lot more calm than we've seen from Spain thus far in this comp. But despite the fact that they're only sitting low, they're both in 4th and 5th at the table currently, with only the Netherlands just behind them.
Russia just have an L against Georgia. That's their only L.
That's the factor.
That's all to play for.
If they win, and in fact, whoever wins this game, because it's a 2-year, as much as it's the Rugby Europe Championship this year, sure, Georgia have already won that. It's 2 years as qualifying for the Rugby World Cup, so it's early days in that. And whoever wins this will be eyeballing Portugal, who are up on, I think, 9 points through 4 games and ahead of them as well. So there's it's fairly bunched, because Romania aren't that much further ahead of them either. Romania are only, where are they on the table? They're I think they're second currently on. Are they on 9
Romania,
or 10 points?
They are second indeed on 9 points.
9 points.
Portugal have
only 5. I should say
games.
That was it.
But Portugal have only played 3 games, including they've obviously had that terrible L against Romania, but they had a great win against Spain when their backs were to the wall, and their other game was against Georgia. So Portugal still with the Netherlands to play, still with Russia to play, so still a lot on the line for Portugal as well. They're well in the mix, but it'll likely all be decided by next year. But for me, Spain are on the ropes, and if Russia lose this game with games against Portugal to come, and that's a problem for Russia as well. So I definitely think this is just
two teams that desperately need to win to keep their World Cup hopes alive,
and both want to go. Spain missed out the last time. Russia, no matter what the sport, always
want to be at the World Cup or Olympics or anything like that. By hook or by crook, they want to get in. So with all that intrigue, it's a very interesting game.
And a stylistic matchup as well. Spain need to go back to their roots and play with tempo. They need to get outside the Russians and cause them problems. They're not going to win the physical battle as much as they have bulked up, and it's probably the one area where they've improved is that they don't get bullied. They need to expand on that, not get bullied, but also move the ball.
Also play some rugby,
and take the loss of Rouet and Ordas, who are their best players, as a positive, even though it isn't. And actually get some younger guys in and just tell them to play ball, with freedom, and try to attack and win the game.
And
be true to their roots
and some damn discipline, because they're tough to, objectively you kind of like Spain, and historically you kind of root for them, but my God, every time I watch them this year,
they're a disgrace. They're borderline disgrace.
Indeed, you're going, come on Russia, which I wouldn't normally say against Spain, but it's like if they are producing the showings they were showing earlier in this campaign, they'll deserve what they get, which will be nothing, which has been the story thus far. So hopefully we see them at least cut out some of the absolutely ridiculous stuff, and we see a good game between two sides that are desperate to get to the World Cup. That is the carrot for all of these sides, is that World Cup, and this is a pivotal game in the search for it. No question. That game taking place this Saturday, as we say. Do you have a thought on who's going to win it? I suspect Russia, but I don't know. Spain have the home advantage. If we can see Spain having, there's been a gap, so everything kind of changes. They've been on ice, both of these teams, for a wee while. So hopefully, what I really hope is that we see a bit more of a disciplined, calm Spanish side. And if we do, I think
in Russia, the summer weather at home.
In the summer weather, objectively, it should be a game that Spain should be targeting to try and run those Russians around. So. My suspicion is that if we see a Spain that are as rudderless and as disjointed as we have been, that Russia will put them under pressure and they'll crack with a yellow card or something. I might have gone for Spain had Rouet and Ordas been there, but given they're not, it's such an unknown. Maybe the guys who come in are great and they can move the ball around and run a game well. Spain are not shy of footballers, and that's what you need at 9 and 10. That's the optimistic hope. But no, my head is telling me that this better coached, more disciplined Russia side, without setting the world alight, will just do enough and
get them in the killer moments, and as you say, exploit the ill discipline, exploit them in the pack, and just defend them and not let them in and suffocate them and win the game that way.
Yeah, that's certainly where my head is at with that one, but open to being proved wrong, and good to see the Rugby Europe Championship back underway. And
nice to see a big game with big stakes. And if you're into delving in the weeds of who might be at the World Cup, that's rugbyeurope.eu. You can stick it on, and they
live stream the games. You can watch them for free live. Yeah, so absolutely. With that, we're going to stick with international rugby and World Cup permutations, because the Rugby Africa Cup, which not many people know about, but the 2021-22 Africa Cup, which is going to double as the qualification for the World Cup in 2023, that got underway earlier this month with 3 games. I believe it was all in Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso beat Burundi 52-3. Then Cameroon beat Burundi 81-3. Burundi being nice and consistent there. And then Burkina Faso edged Cameroon 17-13 in the game of that particular sequence. That was round 1. Round 2 is coming up this weekend, again July 3rd. We have Kenya v Senegal and Namibia v Cote d'Ivoire in that one. But it's a curious kind of setup. It's a 2-year format, obviously. It's beginning with a round robin kind of format, and there are multiple groups. I think there are 5 groups altogether. The top all of them go into second place. It's going to be basically a long repechage over the next couple of years, and they're only fighting for one spot, so it's going to be pretty ruthless by the end. But early going, there will be some mismatches. Obviously Cameroon 81-3 and stuff. You're going to see
there
bits
might
of
be
that.
mismatches right the way through, as there have been. I mean, Namibia clearly front runners to go through and rattle us off. Interestingly, Alistair Coetzee named Namibia coach recently, obviously the former Springboks coach, for whom it did not go well. But pastures new, good opportunity for him to stamp his authority on Namibian rugby and get them to another World Cup, and who knows what they can do this time around. That said, there are other teams always keeping an eye out.
Madagascar, famously the other team, it's their national sport. Rugby is the national sport of Madagascar, so hopefully they do a bit of something.
You're always rooting for a team for whom rugby's the national sport.
Indeed.
Those are the places you want to breathe life into. Uganda have a decent team always. Zimbabwe obviously have a bit of history in the game, and Kenya obviously so great in the sevens are another one to watch out for. But they we'll sort of watch these on the back burner as they develop. It is fairly in the weeds. What I will say though is that it is a fine logo, if you can see it there. I just love it. The rugby ball that becomes the African continent. It's just super cool.
No, indeed, I was doing
very good logo
finding that. Well done Rugby Africa Cup. But so that is obviously only just underway, and it is going to be a long form marathon, not a sprint for these guys. But as you say, Namibia front runners and the incumbents in that. But a fair few twists and turns before we decide who's coming out of Africa to go to that World Cup in France. And similar to the Rugby Europe, they all want it. It's a big coveted carrot for these kinds of unions in tier 2 countries.
No question. Listen, we're going to move on as well and look at the under-20 internationals, which are ongoing.
That's right. The action continued in the Six Nations at the Cardiff Arms Park. Obviously, we had round 1 a couple of weeks ago, which we were mentioning. Round 2 happened, and we had England 31, Scotland 12 in the first game. In the second game, you had Italy 11, France 13, an absolute squeaky bum. Italy have looked pretty good at this level, whereas
it's been a positive couple of weeks for Italy generally.
Indeed,
as positive as they've been ever.
Indeed, true enough, truly. And then the other game was Wales 12, Ireland 40. Ireland
which we can feel smug about.
I feel a bit smug about it. It looked very good. Looked certainly a mismatch between them and Scotland, and them and Wales. The 3 fixtures this week are going to happen on Thursday. That's July 1st. It's a triple header, same as they all have been. So 2:00 kickoff is Scotland v Italy, which I would be fearful for Scotland in, because Italy have shown more in this tournament than Scotland. France v Wales at 5:00, which could be a good game depending. I don't know. I'd normally make France favourites, but France came only just through Italy, and Wales didn't look great. It's tough to know how that one go. The big game of this weekend is the 8:00 kickoff, Ireland v England.
Which just big for historical reasons. It looks like they're the 2 best teams in the comp, so it should be that should be a game with a bit of fire.
Could be a decider in the middle of the tournament. But definitely that high quality affair. That's going to kick off at 8:00 on Thursday. So not really fighting with you with much for your eyeballs if you want to watch some good rugby of a Thursday.
Absolutely.
The under-20s. And then also going underway, as we were mentioning, this all taking place at the Mark Cotter Stadium in Stellenbosch. You have the under-20s international series, which features Uruguay, Georgia, South Africa and Argentina. And we finished round 2, which happened I think yesterday actually, mid-Monday games. South Africa under-20s pumped the Georgian under-20s 42-0, and Uruguay managed 12 points, but Argentina under-20s had managed 35, so beat them handy as well. So we have a repeat of round 1 in the finals, which are taking place again this Saturday, with Georgia under-20s facing Uruguay under-20s. That kicks off at 11 a.m. local time, and then you have a 1 p.m. game, South Africa under-20s v Argentina under-20s in the final of that little series.
And both of which were tight games in the round 1, so it should be exciting to see those ones.
So what was it? Round 1 was 20-15 to Uruguay and 33-26 to South Africa. So good games. Like, to be fair,
good games. And Georgia have been shocked by this. Their under-20s have been very competitive in recent years, but they have rocked up to this competition
and been
dire
bullied.
Straits.
They found it tough. So a chance for redemption against those little, what is it? The
Teritos.
Los Teros and Los Teritos, which I do kind of innately like as a term.
Yes, absolutely.
So the under-20s action still rolling along. With that, I suppose we will park international rugby finally. Jeez, there's a lot of it. And do be sure to check out, we will be releasing probably a preview for the midweek Lions game, but definitely one for the Wallabies France series, which gets underway midweek next week.
Absolutely.
But we are going to pivot for the last time this year, really, before the next season, to look at European club rugby, because we can finally sign, seal and deliver it. We had 2 finals starting in France on Friday night. We had Toulouse 18, La Rochelle 8 in the end, and it was a good final. It was a bit disappointing from La Rochelle point of view in terms of they were very limited in what they were doing or what they were trying to do in terms of how they played that game.
They were. I mean, I don't want to I was down enough on Toulouse last week, and here they are winning the double
champs.
But I gotta say, I mean, the French teams beat the English teams in Europe this year, but one of these tournaments was not like the other when it got to the business end. Like the French competition was full of flair and attack in the mid-season, and boy oh boy did things tighten up when knockout rugby arrived, and the worser instincts of all of these teams.
It's summer, you can't be expected to play rugby in summer.
This is the reason I'd worry for France. I think they're getting the business end a little hairy. Like they got to the European final this year, but it just the standard of this game was mind-bogglingly that's harsh. The standard of La Rochelle was mind-bogglingly bad. Toulouse were just disciplined and professional.
Yeah, it was a wet weather game. Is worth mentioning. The heavens did open on that Friday night, and so it was down to the team that played the calm, disciplined footy was Toulouse, and the other team I don't know what they were doing.
Well, it was weird. They were doing weird things. They were not staying true to their roots. KBA went by the wayside. Yeah, like I'm sure the conversation that was had in the coaching box had to do with this is finals footy, this is wet weather rugby. Let's sort of play our percentages and not overplay our hand here from a La Rochelle point of view. But to just watch La Rochelle in December and watch them in this final, like, you couldn't find a starker contrast. You'd swear they weren't the same team.
Well, Skelton looked awful dropping balls, and then Aldred, as bad as I've ever seen him, dropping all kinds of balls, which is obviously pretty pivotal to them. Ehai West missing kicks.
Ehai West going for kicks. Yeah. I know they didn't play well, but a lot of praise has been levelled at Ronan O'Gara. I think you have to lay the blame squarely on his shoulders, because they just didn't play their game at all. Yeah, they're
very deferent to the Toulouse, the power or the prestige of Toulouse. It was their first ever Bouclier final, or their first Top Tours final. It's not a good one to have in the books in terms of performances. They really did underperform.
They melted, and they got worse from first final to second. But it was bizarre in the second half to see them like miles behind in the game, and then taking on a speculative 3-pointer instead of going for the corner twice.
And then they finally do go for the corner when there was no other option at 77 minutes, and they mauled them straight over. Yeah. In a kind of a look what you might have been doing all game long.
They were the farthest thing from ruthless, and it was just an ugly enough game, to be honest. It was Toulouse were comfortable and were never really pushed, and massive congratulations to them. They've seen it all. I thought
Dupont was excellent again.
Dupont was brilliant,
the best player on the pitch,
and shout out as well to Tommy Ramos stepping in at 10.
Man of the match.
Fantastic.
Man of the match at 10. Lovely key drop goal early doors, which was clinical right when La Rochelle weren't, just to punish them. It's all good savvy. Like Toulouse do have that in spades. Paraguay's like championship know-how, just how to manage these finals and these moments, and they did that much better. Largely due to Tommy Ramos and Dupont, but then also Cheslin Colby shout out has to be made for the highlight of the match, which was that halfway line drop goal that he nailed in the rain. Was
if people
unbelievable.
Tell you can't execute in the rain, and then up steps Cheslin Colby. I mean, at a number of occasions he looked like Lionel Messi on a football pitch, just a class above everyone.
Yeah, he did.
Like,
he
guys were dropping
dangerous.
balls, guys were not sticking passes, and then Cheslin Colby was taking a high bomb, sliding along the ground, and then springing to his
spinning
feet
out of a tackle and getting the ball away. All of that
was
stuff.
Just excellent, and I couldn't speak highly enough of him. But by contrast, I just didn't think the opposition were up to much. I just they got a late try, but for much of the game they were kind of reactive. They were not proactive, and they never took a risk. They never took not one risk.
Well, apart from the
drifting
never going for
them.
a try, which is innately risky in and of itself, when Toulouse are racking up 18 points and you're sitting on 3 with 3 minutes to go.
But I mean, just relying exactly. Yeah, they were. Yeah, they managed to get themselves 18-3 down. I can't remember what the exact score was at the time, but they had Ihaya West, who is a dodgy goal kicker, take on a 3-pointer from the touchline instead of going for a line-out 5-out while they were losing comfortably. They were about 9 points down.
Yeah,
it was bamboozling just to see the lack of nous. Like, when you consider the fact that Rog spent a couple of years in the Crusaders,
and all of his time in Rugby, all of his playing career in Munster was kind of built on big game recognition and savvy and kind of sealing the moments, miracle match, up steps the man, drop goal, all of this kind of stuff that they weren't doing.
No, they were at sea, and they'll have to learn lessons. On a positive note for La Rochelle, I was reading that there were 2 teams who I can't remember off the top of my head who exactly they were. One of them was Stade Francais, who lost both domestic and European finals in the same season, and both of those teams went on to win their domestic league in the ensuing within 3 years of that happening.
And they are still trending upwards. Like, it was their first final, so that's the slack you'll cut them. And it was a very good year, and like scouts like Leinster and stuff like that'll stand to them.
I caveat my criticism with the fact that I've been nothing but effusive in my praise for them all season, and that's what the frustration is. You
didn't see them play their game.
Yeah, you don't rock up to a final and just decide not to play your game. I know it was wet weather rugby, I know it's finals footy, but it's naive and wrong to change who you are and just sort of lean on your physicality and expect that to be enough. It certainly
felt there was a lot of too much deference, not undue deference, but too much deference to your opponents in the way they approached the Toulouse game on both fronts. There was a lot of reverence for Toulouse, where as you were saying, there's things to get at in that Toulouse team. They're not like, that's what's scary, is that they're still quite a young team. There's potential for this Toulouse team to get much better, because there are frailties here and there despite the double champions. Feel like you can get at them if you take it to them. Like, certainly Leinster have shown that in the previous few seasons. You didn't quite see that from La Rochelle. They didn't take the game to them. They didn't really ask any pressing questions. And Toulouse were able to just manage their way through the game pretty efficiently and effectively.
Jerome Kano, massive shout out to him coming off the bench, was sublime, and just onwards he trucks. He continues on with them. Victor Vito, by contrast, he was fine, like, off the bench, but he did give a post-match interview which was, as you say, just extremely deferential. It was like, oh man, they just blew us away in that first half and we couldn't cope up. They're just a really great team. And I was like, I don't know, you didn't play at all. They should have been more disappointed, but I guess I'm sure they are.
They are. Well, like next season. But it is nothing to take away from the double champs Toulouse. 5 stars, the best team in European club rugby history without a doubt at this point, and a young team with a lot of talent.
They've managed to win a double without playing to their potential, in my view. Like, I think Dupont and Colby and that whole team can put together even better. Like, they have a higher ceiling than they reached this year, and if they ever reach it, everyone got to be very watch out.
Well, them versus Saracens in 2023, what a game that could be.
Exactly. Like,
them versus Leinster in 2022.
They're still young. They're still young, and now they're champions. And it was the thing I was asking of these young French stars was to get their hands on silverware.
I'm sure now.
Toulouse, I know it's the bouclier. Someone's got to win it in France, but this is the spine of the French team that wants to go and win a World Cup. And they're learning to win in all kinds of ways, which is very, very exciting.
That's true. True. And with that, I suppose we will park the top 14 and pivot to a far more flowy spectacle of a final in the Premiership. We had on Saturday, following this one up, Quins 40, Chiefs, or Exeter Chiefs, 38. What a game it was.
Oh my goodness.
What a final. Have you ever seen the like of it? 78 points in a cup final. And it was fantastic. And the right team won it.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. It was, I mean, I thought Exeter, for all money, had them, like, for Quins to pull off that late charge and to do it while I think most of their pack were out on their feet.
They were just
like,
raggedy.
They couldn't move, and that's why you saw them concede that late try to Stuart Hogg after they'd gone and won it. But they could barely walk, a lot of those forwards, but they just kept moving the ball even relentlessly regardless of that.
Yeah.
The Exeter were tired, they were tired, they just kept the pace of the game high.
Yeah.
And Marcus Smith again just leading a very, very fine team. Danny Kerr I thought was brilliant as well.
Don Brandt, imperious in the
imperious
carry
as always. But then Louis Lina stealing the headlines after
Absolutely.
an anonymous enough
It's
game.
true.
Just
He was
taking the
pretty
tries.
poor, in fact,
Yeah.
in large periods. But then he grabbed those couple of tries, and it was panning up to his dad, Michael, in the crowd, and that was very much the newsworthy story from it, as indeed it should be. But yeah, no, there were lovely tries found throughout. I think Marchand, was excellent throughout, as he had been in the semi final as well. It was a really, really good showing from him, like assured distributing, being that link for Marcus Smith to kind of bail him out a little bit wider as an option.
Every touch a good one. That's what you get with Marchand at the moment. Yeah, they were outstanding. And listen, I thought the Chiefs had done a great job of pulling it out. You know, they went 26-12 down or whatever it was, and it looked like there was game over, and really they just took over from there, and it looked like the Quins' legs were giving out. They were very methodical in what they were doing. They were setting up those offensive drives and they were converting them.
Yeah.
And then randomly on 67 minutes after they got the lead back, they kicked a goal to go 31-26 up. They had a 28-26 lead and a near 100% conversion rate in the red zone. And then they kicked a goal. They took a penalty into the corner, earned another penalty, and chipped it over for a 5-point lead. And these things don't get reflected on, but they are wrong. And the take your points brigade never take their L's when they come into them. That was like a disastrous decision.
Do you know what?
That
It's
flipped
the
the momentum of the game.
They are such a good team for not doing that.
Yeah.
They're such a great team for going to the corner and ignoring the 3-pointer and being clinical.
Yeah.
And they're on 2 occasions this season they've deviated from that and kicked the 3. One of them was that final, which they lost.
Yeah.
The other was the game against Leinster, which they lost in the Champions Cup. Like, it was a weird one where the pressure came on and they obviously felt it, but they deviated and they kicked that 3 in a baffling display of poor arithmetic as well as poor match awareness, because it's not a good play. Like, you call it the Ireland 07 rule or the Ireland France 07 rule, where if you're 2 points up or 3 or 1 point up and you kick a 3 to objectively take it out beyond a score, it's not beyond a score. It's a bad idea. And if there's only 2 minutes left in the game and you're 1 point up, are you better off chipping it over for a 4-point cushion and having to receive a kickoff and defend for 3 minutes, or are you better off kicking to the corner, trusting that you're going to retain your line out and go through phases and either crash over for a game-winning score or just see out the rest of the game over here by going through multi-phase? Like, the latter is the sensible option, and yet you often see teams opt for the former.
Well, you often hear the rhetoric you often hear is that it's not, but that was a mistake, and as you rightly point out, from a side that doesn't make those mistakes, Exeter took their foot off the gas, and that was all Quins needed. They came back with 2 tries in incredible fashion. Louis Lina crossing over, and Marcus Smith integral again with just that perfect passing game we talked about, running that show all the way. And just a sensational Quins team. I want to give a shout out to them all. Joe Marler was man of the match again.
Marler
manages to put in an 80-minute shift after a 100-minute shift. Just
freaky engine from a Lucy.
Wilco Lowe, how I know it's the Springboks, but how this guy isn't in the Springboks squad is wild.
That's it. Like, he's the one who, like, in the prop crisis that the Springboks might have, it's like up steps Wilco Lowe, 4th choice. What?
Yeah, exactly. He'd be right in there.
Yeah.
So many classy players. Joe Marchand, as you were right to point out. Esterhazy coming back into the team is huge.
Combining brilliant. That's a really good centre pairing that Quins have right there.
And Tyrone Green, who could well come into that Springbok side.
He's been fantastic. Play against the Lions, he was excellent. He was really good against Bristol the week before. He was integral to that comeback, that mighty comeback. What a story it's been from Quins, from 4th, from limping in a tussle with a few other teams to just make it to the play playoffs. They've come in and they've lit it up between the absolutely historic comeback and the extra time.
In January when their coach left, Gustard, and then just since then, maybe just the players playing with freedom, young team just deciding to throw caution to the wind, and look what happened. And I must say, like, as much as this league has been fabulous, the Premiership, it has been box office, without question the most entertaining league in Europe. So much fun.
14?
No. So much fun, and Quins winning it is just the icing on top of a very nice cake. What a fantastic league they've had in England, and I attach no caveats to that. I think it's been absolutely
I think
brilliant.
so too. I think the only caveat I'd attach is occasionally they're shocked at Europe and they don't quite make the step.
I think they're coming though. I think they're getting it way more right than they used to, and I think some of these teams are coming forces, and I love the attacking. I love the emphasis on attacking rugby.
Yeah, you love the fact that Exeter didn't win.
Well, I just love the fact that the game was a 78-point thriller. It stayed true to its roots, this league, of what it's been all season. Unlike the top couture, they didn't go into their shell. They both sides went for it. And got their win, and that is how you beat Exeter.
Fantastic spectacle. It is how you beat Exeter.
You have to score. Like, they're so clinical, you have to be clinical and quicker than they are. And that's what Quins were.
It was. It's true. Ultimately. And I also thought it aged poorly, Baxter's decision to leave Hogg out of the team. Not just because he played well. Like, Noel played excellently. Noel did pull the strings from fullback, but Cuthbert didn't really, and then he got injured and took a knock, and O'Flaherty was also anonymous and a little bit loose at times, and then you're like, you have a lion on your bench, guy.
Probable starting lion. That was it. I don't know why he did it, Baxter, but I don't think it was correct. At all. But
that is all water under the bridge. Congratulations to Quins for their win. They are Premiership champions now, and then as you say, a very entertaining league campaign all year. Credit to those guys, because they rolled right on through the pandemic. It has been a long season for these guys, and to produce a final like that as a spectacle to end it is super, a worthy way. And for some of those guys now, go and take a well-deserved break. For others, like your Marcus Smith, time to get some well-earned minutes in an England jersey over the course of the next few games. Really good to sign off the season on an overwhelming high with a great few games.
Absolutely. Just in other bits of housekeeping, the Currie Cup is ongoing. That's still happening. In South Africa, it's yet another Currie Cup. These teams haven't stopped playing each other. Only the first game has been called off between the Cheetahs and the Blue Bulls. That's the first cancelled game we've had in the Currie Cup, and potentially the first of many. As it stands, the Blue Bulls still have the lead in that league, but it's going on. I must say, bit jaded. Seeing these teams play each other a lot.
Too many SAFA teams playing each other. Tough to get dialed in. I remember being very excited about the Currie Cup when it was 2020, and then the Super Rugby unlocked, and we were covering it quite in detail. But geez, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, and they haven't
so
stopped.
Many times have they played each other since.
How many times? Well, anyway, this weekend or Wednesday, I should say, the Cheetahs and the Bulls game has been called off, so that's a 0-0 draw. Western Province playing Natal Sharks, so the Stormers Sharks again, and the Pumas play the Griquas, and
interesting. The Pumas have started pretty well. They pumped the Lions in week 1, and they very nearly beat the Blue Bulls as well. So the Pumas looking good in that. Then the other news is the MLR.
Ongoing. Just a few games this weekend.
It's getting into the end game now in terms of the end. The end of it is July 18th is the end of the regular season, and there are 2 playoff games that are to be confirmed start on the 24th and the 25th of July. There are only 4 games this weekend. There are a few games in hand that are being caught up on. But there were some very potentially decisive results last weekend. We had Nola Gold edging the Free Jacks 17-9, and both of those in the same conference. That probably has ended the Free Jacks challenge. And similarly, the Gilgronis beat the San Diego Legion 33-14, and that'll probably do for the San Diego challenge as well, because it's just they're on 32 points in the Western Conference. The leaders are LA on 55. with a game in hand, and then there's Utah 51 and the Gilgronis at 46, so that's probably a bridge too far for San Diego, but all three of those teams are still vying for 2 places. The Giltinis obviously favoured with that game in hand, but still in the mix. And then in the East you have Rugby Atalanta in the current lead on 51 points, but Rooney, which is Rugby United New York, on 46, and NOLA on 42, still jostling for position behind them, and both with a game in hand.
Yeah, that's right. And Rugby United New York getting the win last week, likewise NOLA. Huge game this weekend between the Free Jacks and Rugby United New York. If the Free Jacks get a win there, that opens the door for NOLA, but NOLA have a game against the Giltinis, the all-conquering Giltinis, which they might need to win. They might not, but they might need to win it.
I'm pretty sure they do need to win it, or it probably will pan out that way. The season's getting close to finished. Obviously there'll be a few US guys missing, and then the other game that's on is Seattle Seawolves v San Diego Legion, a repeat of last year's final, but buried in obscurity because neither of these teams are probably going to get to the postseason this year. And then the other one is our very own pet team, or two of our pet teams who aren't going to feature at the business end, but you have Old Glory DC, who have to go down as the greatest Twitter account in rugby. Whoever's managing that, I'm going to give them the shout out because their tweets are fire. And the Toronto Arrows as well, who are our pet franchise, who play some lovely rugby, are sometimes found out for a little bit of lack of physicality and some nous as well by the top teams. But 4 good games this weekend, and not that stacked a schedule, which is good because they're competing with a lot.
Absolutely. We are now at long last going to arrive at our last segment, the rugby news of the week.
That's right.
The first story that we have is just that Pascal Gozer's game between the Lions and Japan at the weekend was his last. He's going to focus, he says, on interests outside of the sport. A fine ref in his time, and we wish him all the best.
We do.
Bowing out of the game.
Doing it on his turn. He was saying he wanted to go out on a high, and I suppose ref on the Lions v Japan is as good a place as any to hang up the whistle.
He did a fine job.
I agree.
Absolutely. So good on Gozer. Then the Rugby Australia has been confirming also, just in regards to that test against France, that they moved the games to Brisbane. I think we touched on this last week, but that is officially confirmed that the games in Sydney will now be in Brisbane.
So that effectively means that Test 1 and Test 2 are in Suncorp.
Which is very tough.
Or Test 1 and Test 3, I should say, in Suncorp, which is exactly where Australia want them. There's one game in between that is in
Melbourne.
Melbourne, that's right. So that'll be the one that France will have to target. But it's going to be a tough test because Suncorp, as we were saying last week, that's a tough old place to go, and Australia don't like losing there and don't do so regularly. But speaking of Australia, actually, there was news that they may be flexing their rule and bending their rule to allow for the likes of Will Skelton, Rory Arnold and Curtly Beale to be recalled from Europe and receive test starts possibly in the Rugby Championship this year. That would be a good precedent to start. Like, obviously they have the Matt Giddo rule that they have in there, which is I think it's 60 caps, is it? But not all of them match up to that, but a bit more flexibility is probably needed, because certainly you look at the 2 Arnolds for Toulouse and Skelton for La Rochelle, and just the mighty meaty nature of those locks, and then you see what they've been producing over the last, or what they've been lining up there, certainly what they brought to the World Cup. It's just not as good. It's not as hefty. They're ignoring some of their assets in big tournaments.
They are without question doing that, and it is a pivotal year for Australian rugby with all the free-to-air eyeballs on the game. Like, if they can get a bit of momentum going, obviously the Super Rugby AU was brilliant, but now Test Rugby is where it's really at, and they have it free-to-air. It'll be huge if they can put on a bit of a show and go on a run in the Rugby Championship, or get a win here against France. That those kind of things are very important. So doing whatever it takes to win these games is quite vital, and that would include getting some of the best players in the world in their positions into the Test jersey. So I wouldn't mind seeing them do it. I understand why they don't, but it feels like swimming against the tide to some extent.
I'd agree with that. And in other news, you have the Champions Cup format being confirmed for next year, and it is much the same as the augmented format we had this year.
Except we didn't get to see it really. They've got their 2 pools, but they've also got the last 16 2-legged last 16, which they wanted to trial this year.
Didn't work out for COVID,
but they didn't get to do so. I think it's an interesting idea. They definitely don't like the rounds 5 and 6, where you get those dead rubber games and teams from England and France are picking a B team, which tends to pad the scores. Like they have issue with those pool games, and they want to add more games of consequence to get more eyeballs involved. So
not a bad precedent. Certainly not a bad sentiment. I
it's
kind of agree
interesting
with them. Certainly watching, like I don't need to see Leinster Montpellier in June or January.
Like round
anymore.
5 game where Montpellier are already out and they pick the B team, and it's kind of a pointless endeavour, really. Yeah, so freshening up the format definitely seems to make sense in my mind.
Yeah, I think so too. So that'll be trialled this year. It'll be hopefully outside of the shadow of COVID that we've had this year, and hopefully a few fans back as well, and then that games of consequence with crowds could be back, and hopefully a bit of atmosphere for next year's marquee tournament in Europe. Then speaking of European club competition, we have the Premiership confirming that a 14-team Premiership expansion plan with no relegation until 2024 that includes now Saracens, the freshly promoted, and the Ealing Trailfinders as well under the banner. So it'll kind of be ring fenced with those two in it, and that'll probably improve things. Like, it's like these teams were bloody good. It was a great tournament this year. You introduce Asaris to that mix, and Ealing showed some good hustle in things they were.
You're telling me that 117-15 game was just blood sport?
Yes,
it was just pointless, meaningless.
Well, it wasn't pointless. There were lots of points, but yes, it was
just meaningless blood sport. Fair enough. The other bit of news we have is that Scotland are having to shut up shop basically to try and stave off a COVID outbreak in their training camp. They've had to cancel their A fixture with England on the weekend, which is unfortunate, and they're basically going to have to. They've had 11 players test positive, and they do have some games lined up for the summer, so they'll have to isolate, and it will disrupt their training, but hopefully everyone will recover okay and they'll be able to play as on schedule.
Hopefully so. If mercifully they weren't scheduled for a game this weekend anyway, so nothing's cancelled as of yet. It's just the news that there is the outbreak, and they'll have to try and contain it.
Yes, indeed. And finally then, before we wrap up what has been another marathon show, it's good to see us back to ludicrous ways, as we often are. There are plans now for Japan to join the Rugby Championship from 2024, and that's according to a report from stuff.co.nz. Paul Cully there was basically saying,
we were mentioning that earlier.
He was saying that there's a good chance that now they're going to want to expand it from 2024. That's when they're looking at, and I think he got a quote from Rugby Australia's chief, who was basically saying we're going to be watching Japan with keen interest, and basically
so Japan no longer under the radar. The radar is very much on Japan.
I think this would make sense for all involved.
Makes sense for all involved. Sure, you already have Kiwis flooding to Japan, to the top league with professional contracts and doing that. You already have that kind of channel of communication open, so it makes good sense. You had the Sunwolves in Super Rugby already. It's been teased already, and then couple that with Japan's showing in their own World Cup and the fact that they have Tier 1 status now, it seems a matter of time. It's a good plan. 2024 is probably the right year, just given the fact that they've got a World Cup cycle to prepare for right now. They don't need it just yet.
The year after that World Cup makes a lot of sense, and it gives them time to prepare, and hopefully that deal goes through, and we get what we're all waiting for, which is the Japan involved in Tier 1 competition a lot more, and on the evidence of the World Cups, I wouldn't worry about them. It'll be similar to Argentina. They'll come in, they'll get slapped for a few seasons, then they'll get better, then they'll win games,
and they'll consistently play at a style and a brand and have a fan base that'll pick up all the litter afterwards, and it's impossible not to like them. Impossible not to like them, apart from when they come to Dublin to try and take on Ireland, and then you get very nervous, and it can be very
truly. Listen, I think that's all we have for you guys today. That's plenty enough, but anyway, listen, thanks so much for tuning in. Do be sure to like and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications as well. Try and get our video that's going to be previewing the Wallabies against France, potentially a video coming out previewing the Lions and the Sharks, and if you don't catch those, we'll be back next week with a new show as well. So looking forward to seeing you guys as the Lions tour progresses. And thanks a million for tuning in. Be sure to comment as well.
Comment down below. Get that active comment base going on. Drop your thoughts. If you have any questions, any corrections, anything, drop it down below. Please do like, subscribe and share and all of that as well. And nothing else to say except we'll see you next week, folks.
Goodbye.
Bye. Okay. It's an overthrow.
It's a lighter ball, that one.
There
you go.
Skimmed the top. Negative. Didn't go in. Just impacted on the surface.